Hello, and welcome to the Honest Youth Pastor YouTube channel, the channel that helps believers use biblical discernment in all aspects of life today. I've been talking about doing this video for quite some time, and I just have not had the time. It's been actually incredibly busy at work, and so it's been at least, 3, 4, 5 days? I don't know. I know a lot of videos have been made on this, but late to the party as always, and figured what I haven't seen is a number of people go through the whole video. So what I have seen are people reacting to parts of the video, even though I haven't actually finished a whole one of those. I'm aware that a few people that I follow on YouTube have reacted to this in some form or fashion. I just don't know exactly everything they've said in regards to that. So today we are going to do what I always do here, which is a very long and drawn out process of walking through the entire video. Now, the video itself is an hour long, as many of you probably know, because you've probably already watched it. So I don't even know if this is going to be helpful to you, but we're going to give it a shot either way. Now, in case you don't know anything about this, which I doubt, but maybe you don't. New Christendom Press, which is a publishing house that is connected to, I think it's Refuge Church, that's pastored by Eric Kahn and Brian Sauvé and a couple other guys, put on a conference. And at that conference, as you may or may not know, if you host conferences, those have to be paid for in some way, form, or fashion. And so you get sponsors. Now, one of the sponsors apparently for New Christendom Press's conference was a publishing house, also a publishing house called Antelope Hill. And Antelope Hill posted some different pictures from their booth at the conference that had fascist, pro-right, pro-white, a lot of things. You can go look them up on their table. And obviously, I think I at least made one post about it. I think I made one post about it the day I found out about it right before I went to bed. Neil Shimvey, I think is his name. He posted about it, so I just kind of retweeted that. And so anyway, I posted about it, looked up the publishing house, a couple things because I didn't know what they were even all about. And you can go check them out. You can do the whole thing. There's actually after I'm done with this, I'll put in the description a video that the guy that was manning the booth did while they were there, and he isn't shy at all about what Antelope Hill does and what they promote, and that they are everything that everyone assumes that they are, which is very mustache man aligned. So you can go check them out. What we're going to be looking at today is, obviously, because of all of that got stirred up online, Brian and Eric do a podcast on their, I don't even know what it's called, King's Hall, I think is what it's called, podcast to discuss the controversy. Now, we're going to be watching this. Now, I made a post really quick. I want to make sure that I read my post because there's some people asking, what are you doing? What are you talking about? After I watched this, so I watched it on 1.5 speed again as I was about to go to bed, the day they posted it. And I said, this is long, but I think it's helpful. They take accountability where needed and stand 10 toes down on what they believe, being transparent about what occurred. Brian and Eric do seem genuine here, and I have no reason to believe they aren't. The real underlying issue seems to not be New Christendom Press themselves, with the people primarily online that were so quick to be okay with openly aligning themselves with both New Christendom Press and the Mustache Man. And so we'll look at the whole thing, because I obviously that I don't think was clear enough in regards to what I thought about the whole thing. So I thought it would be helpful to walk through the whole thing. A few things before we begin. I got a couple people in the chat. I'm Clifford today. Hey, what's up? Interesting. He's doing a video too, apparently, so that'll be interesting to see his. And then thank you for the super chat. That is awesome. I appreciate it very much. So let's go ahead and hop into it. Let's go over to the reaction screen. and get into this because it's a long video. And if you've watched any of my videos before, you also know that I make them even longer. Now, there are some very boring parts of this. The beginning of this is very boring, but for the sake of full context and to show sort of their attitude toward this whole thing, I think it's really important to watch the whole thing. So I'm going to play it all the way through and pause in case you're new here and pause where I think appropriate to make comment. And that's what we do here in case you're new. So let's get into it.
This episode of the King's Hall podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Eric Kahn, joined today by the cut svelte Brian Sauvé.
Thank you, Eric. I, as always, needed that. Your voice sounds a little tired, Eric.
No reason.
Why?
No reason. It is actually funny. We just got done with the conference, 2026. So we're doing a recap. Brian, we were talking about this, but like even preaching yesterday during the service,
Yeah.
like we have both sounded like teenagers at multiple points with cracking voices.
Yeah.
A lot of talking.
Yeah, a lot of talking. I think I've been talking for 18 hours a day for 6 days straight at this point, which is really good for your vocal folds. So I'm feeling good.
Well, I mean, I really wonder how many words were spoken, because when you factor in like mixers,
Yeah.
talks, and then just being on the floor talking to so many different people.
Hundreds of people. Yeah.
I mean, I like talking,
Again, just stick with me here. There's a lot of this.
but I got to the point where, like, we were riding home and my wife, she was like, "This is the quietest I've ever seen you." And I was like, literally my vocal cords don't work.
They're just singing at church. Conducting the singing on Sunday. I will not lie. I was lip syncing, but not because I was not trying to make sounds come out, but they just were not, they would no longer come out of the vocal apparatus. So it was, praise God, the people held it down. They showed up and sang. So
Our vocal cords are like power lifters after a powerlifting competition.
yeah, I think it is equally. I would actually put it a little bit more strongly. I would say that our vocal cords are kind of like Aragorn after Helm's Deep, something a little more heroic, something like that.
Our vocal cords have been on the ride of the Rohirrim. Let's go. So great conference, obviously. War for Normal. This year was interesting to me. It's the biggest one we've had.
Yep.
We started with 200 people 4 years ago.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Is that right? 4 years ago?
4 years ago, 200 people. Like, what are we doing here? Like, how do we do a conference?
Yeah, it kind of shocked me. I think Ben at one point asked, like, who is here for the first time?
Yeah.
There was a lot of hands.
Way more than I expected.
Yeah.
We had people who had been there all 4 years, which was like obviously a small group. We had people that were there a couple times, but yeah, probably over half. Like, no, I've never actually been to the conference, which was really amazing to meet all those folks. And just like some of the highest quality. I feel like every single year, the quality of men, women, families. Like, one thing I noticed this year, we have more kids than we've ever had at the conference.
Now, a couple of things on this, right? One of the appeals, I think, I think maybe Brian specifically, maybe I just see his stuff more because of his music, but one of the appeals of a conference like this that they're hosting is that most conferences are not family friendly in regards to like bring your kids. By family friendly, I mean they don't encourage that, right? They don't price accordingly to that, and so it's one of those things where oftentimes you do have to like, all right, well, is one person going? Is a husband and wife going? And usually you can't take the whole family, especially if you have multiple kids, because you're looking at tickets for everybody. You're looking for all that. So kudos to them for at least putting on a conference that encourages that kind of thing, because that is often not how the pricing structure works. Also, it is, I think, important to take note, regardless of like where we end up at the end of this video, that a conference that grows that much in 4 years is pretty, it's pretty impressive, because you're going from 200 people 4 years ago to 1,500 now. I don't do math well, but I know that's a very large jump in just 4 years. And so when you're looking at that, again, regardless of where you come down on the side of any of this, one of the things that is important to look at is the reality that is exponential growth. And so something that they're saying, right? Again, I know we're looking specifically at the content they're addressing here, but the things that they're saying are obviously the things that you're saying aside from the controversy and what it entails are appealing to specifically young families. And so that is something to take note of what's going on.
As we said, let's make it as affordable as possible. Let's launch the family pass that lowered the cost for the average family by like 40 to 50%.
Yeah.
With kids. And so we had tons of kids, but they were not disruptive.
No.
There was very little, like it was actually similar to a church service at our church where the kids are really well trained. And so they don't wild and like run up and down the aisles or anything like that. But it was very impressive.
Yeah, and those were, especially when you consider like they were there like 2 full days.
The kids are like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
I did have to laugh yet again. It was like Sunday and we're doing the picnic and all the kids, and they're like 2 lines, and they were like, we got knights out there in like battle armor.
Yes.
And the kids are marching at each other.
Some of them had been planning for weeks. They were like, we're going to do our stick fight at the picnic.
They had some wiggles to get out.
Yeah, they had been building them up. And it was unreal. So thank you everybody that came, all the families. Like we were just very, very thankful to you guys for being there.
Yeah, so Brian, with all that, we had a phenomenal time.
Yeah.
But a little bit of online kerfuffle that it was kind of interesting. We're closing down the conference like Saturday night. Like everybody is like, this is like what, day 3,000 of the conference, it felt like.
When you've been in the preparation too.
Oh my goodness.
Like the amount of work it takes to pull off something like this with 1,500 plus guests, a ton of auxiliary events. And
legitimately, like, just a shout out to our church and all of our people.
Unbelievable.
So many people put in so many hours of work. And we talked about it the week before as a church, like to be hospitable.
Yeah, let's show these people love.
To show love to these all these people who traveled.
So here's another thing, right? I know we're going to be covering something that everybody, is talking about or was talking about. I guess it's maybe not anymore. But also, there is a particular, again, I think we're going to go over some of the issues here. But there is something to be said about a church culture in which there are people that want to be hospitable, want to host a conference. Because here's the thing. Again, they don't get into a lot of the details, but if you've ever put on anything that is more than 100, 200 people, that takes a lot of hands, especially if you're feeding people, especially if you're hosting people, if you're having to clean and provide a building, if you're doing a picnic like they're talking about. All of these things take a lot of man hours and a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of planning. And they don't just go off without a hitch, like just because, everything accidentally falls into place. They take time and energy and effort and a lot of volunteers. And if you don't have volunteers, they take a lot of money. Most conferences lose money. That's just how it goes. If you know anybody that's in the conference industry, especially Christian conference industry, or has ever put one on, they're going to tell you you're losing money. It's not a money maker. It's really networking. It's really about bringing people together that are under a very specific sort of ideology or umbrella or purpose or cause, and they're coming together to network, and you're not making any money. And you're spending a lot of time. As far as like return on investment, there's not a lot there. And so you have, you got to give them kudos in regards to building a culture that enables that to happen to where it goes off apparently pretty well.
So many miles to be here with their kids, their families, the number of like 15 passenger vans in the parking lot was inspiring, truly.
Yeah, it swelled the population of Utah significantly.
So then we see all this going on social media. People were demanding like immediate responses.
And we're like literally still in the 3rd hour of talking to people. Like I haven't opened my phone, and
we have to prepare for Sunday worship because
I'm preaching the next morning.
This was the other crazy thing. Like I was just blown away how many people stayed. Like somewhere around 1,400 people for worship.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable.
Yeah.
So then people were like, okay, why aren't you responding immediately to this? And we're like, we actually still have to play host and love the people who are here.
Yeah.
But here we are, we're responding. And so, I just want to ask you about that. What happened for people? A lot of people actually aren't on social media.
Yeah, some people will have no idea what we're talking about. Social media can feel like the whole world. It was a good reminder on the Lord's Day yesterday, worshiping with everybody, and then fellowship.
I do find that to be an interesting comment about the whole, some people find social media to be the whole world. I think sometimes, look, I'm on social media a lot, quite a bit, more than probably is healthy sometimes. And I see a lot of posts. Now, I don't follow Eric. I follow Brian because of the music. Again, I've posted this before. Stand by it. You can say anything you want about Brian. His music's good. I really like his music. And so what you have, I do see him on a lot. And so I think it's one of those things where this is sort of an ironic comment, I think, coming from both of them, because since then I've looked at Eric's account as well. They're on a whole bunch. And definitely the people that are like hardcore followers of theirs, all the Aeon accounts that just like act like they're 14, they're on a lot too. And so this idea of like, don't be online, all the time, it seems to be sort of how most of the people found out about them. And so while I totally agree, online is not the real world. I just found that as an ironic comment because they are on almost all the time. Most of the things that, in fact, I see Brian comment about that aren't music related are usually things that are online as well.
Shipping over lunch and the picnic afterward. Hearing from a bunch of people that were just like, that what they took away from the conference versus if you had just like only the internet, what you would think we were doing is like, people would think that it was a goose stepping like SS march around Weber and Davis County. And that, people were like chanting in German and call.
So I think, again, maybe he's being like overly sarcastic here. I didn't see anybody even imply that. What they're going to get to why there may be that assumption, but nobody's even implying that. In fact, one of the all of the things that I saw about it initially were simply about the vendor and the vendor being there. And so perhaps, and I think he probably is, being a little overly sarcastic here in regards to what the people would have assumed was going on there. But in reality, all of the concern, which apparently, I don't know if these two are so much about the word concern. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I don't know. A lot of their followers are very upset about the word being used, concern. But a lot of the concern was that the vendor was there in the first place, which we'll address a little bit. But just to sort of clarify, I don't know if I saw any post where people were like, well, everyone there is obviously a Mustache Man follower. I didn't see that as an assumption.
Calling for acts of violence or something. And it was more like, hanging out, talking about parenting and local political engagement, like being good churchmen and all of that.
Yeah, building a productive household.
Yeah.
Even the questions, I just want to say, the questions that we were fielding from people, like it was all pastoral.
Yeah, we brought the whole session of Refuge Church on the stage for a 60 or 90 minute Q&A live. We're just, hey, let's go around with a mic and what are your questions? Because we've gotten the sense over the years that, we talk a lot about church and culture and politics and stuff on King's Hall and a lot of our shows. But we just kept getting the sense like what people are hungry for too. They care about that stuff, but it's like, how do I be a good dad?
Yeah.
How do I discipline? Hey, I see your church. There are a lot of kids, but there are also a lot of well-behaved kids. How do you discipline? How do you?
So one of the concerns about that is if you have 1,500 people coming there from other churches, I'm assuming they go to church somewhere. You have that many people coming to your church and then asking those questions. There seems to be a lack, and maybe this is why this seems to be the sense I'm getting as well from some people online, is that if you don't have that within your local church, like older men that are good examples that you can ask the question, how do you parent well? Like that's an issue. I mean, it's a very basic one. It's a Titus 2 thing. Like there are supposed to be godly men within your local assembly that are going to be able to mentor you and answer your questions and demonstrate these things for you. And so if you're having to ask other people that aren't in your local church, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that it's one of those things that do you not have that where you're already at? But I think that is one of the appeals, again, to give them credit where credit is due. I think that is one of the appeals that people, like one of the reasons they really like the King's Hall or Refuge Church or Brian specifically or Eric specifically, is because there is a missing piece. And I think pastors and older Christian men and women need to pay attention to this. There is a want and a desire to learn things other than theology, right? There's an understanding that theology is important, but how do you practically apply that? That's why when we do the sermon reviews, one of the criteria is how do you, like, is there practical application of the text? Because if there's not, you're missing an enormous piece of what preaching and teaching is, which is applying that text rightly to everyday situations. And if you are missing that in your local church, you will try to find that elsewhere. And I think one of the appeals of everything that these two do is that. And the sad part is, I think it goes back to Paul when he's talking to the Corinthians. He says you have a lot of teachers, but very few fathers. If you don't have, older godly fathers within the church, you'll seek out teachers elsewhere. And I think part of the platform that they have is because of that.
Questions about how to honor parents.
We talked a ton about the concept of honoring up the chain of hierarchy.
Yeah.
How you talk to your real Zionist dad or something, and like it's just not about converting your parents to all of your niche boutique beliefs or whatever, but just really doing a good job. So we talked about that, honoring your pastors, giving them don't go and over 6 months develop like 18 beliefs that are contrary to your normal church life and then present them to your pastor as a fait accompli, but actually give them the courtesy of like, hey, I've been looking at, tell them if you think I shouldn't, whether it's patriarchy or paedobaptism or whatever, because as pastors, you
got to give him kudos on this too, right? Now, again, they're not addressing the elephant in the room, as it were. They'll get to that in a minute. But the advice, there's no reason to not assume this is the advice that they're giving. If this is the advice that they're giving, how to honor, your mother and father that may have different opinions of you on different theological things, or if you've been studying and your theological views are shifting, don't just leave your church. Don't just say, well, if you don't change this, I'm leaving. Like, go to your pastor and have a discussion. All of this is good advice.
Real pastoral ministry, like, every once in a while, you'll have someone come to you and say, hey, for 8 months, I've been studying Roman Catholicism and I'm converting. You're like, well, it would have been nice to know that like earlier.
So we could talk about it.
So people are sometimes surprised to hear us say this, but we're constantly telling people before Bright Hearth or the King's Hall, like brings you all the way down, whatever. And we only say what we think is true. Even so, don't be disruptive to your church. Honor your elders. Like, make sure they give them the opportunity to be good, honorable elders who persuade you and are involved in overseeing.
Now, one of the curious things I would have in this discussion is how either one of these two would react if their elders, like if the elders of the theoretical person's church tell them you shouldn't follow, anything that Brian Sauvé or Eric Kahn do because of XYZ. So if the elders of a local church say don't follow these guys, would Eric and Brian be like, all right, well, honor your elders in that regard? That's a question I would have, because there's quite a few people online that have been very clear about like these guys are like, no, the way they based upon this video, by the time we get to the end of it, they would say do not follow these guys. And so it'd be very interesting to hear from Brian and Eric, which they don't need to answer this, but it would be very interesting to know their answer. Would they say honor your elders even if your elders are Zionist, even if your elders tell people not to follow anything that these two say? Like, would they still be on board with honor those elders and stay in that church? Or would that be like, now that's a no? Like, now don't honor your elders.
And then, you can still change your mind on things and adopt new positions and even decide that I can no longer submit in good conscience in a certain church, but do it in the right order, and do it in an orderly fashion that honors the hierarchies God built into the world. So all that to say, the 30,000 foot view of the like smoke bombs that have just been lobbed over the conference online that everyone's freaking out about and demanding denunciations from us and explanations. And so first of all, there's why we didn't give you instant internet play-by-plays, because we were busy. Serving people. We were busy. Like,
what's really interesting, and again, this is where I think some of their followers come in, and this just came to mind because of yesterday. A lot of their or one specifically, was like, because I had posted something about it shouldn't be hard to denounce the mustache man. Then goes, well, what about the report that came out of Britain? Literally 24 hours before they made this comment. I haven't had time to read it. I said, well, that's way more important than going after the mustache man people. I submit to you the exact answer that Brian just gave you. I was very busy. So it's just interesting, not necessarily Brian and Eric's thing, but the people that are so like obsessed with them and everything they do. The hypocrisy that's involved.
We're busy. So we had, as we do every year with conferences, we have lots of different businesses and productive households, from small businesses that are households to and like solo entrepreneurs to larger businesses that sponsor various auxiliary events or have a booth at the sponsor area that's like in the next room. This year we had 52 sponsors in that room, and like just, man, some high quality, absolutely phenomenal family Christian businesses over there. And we had one sponsor that was there, which was a publishing house. They're called Antelope Hill. And they publish, we'll get into it, they publish varying historical works, a lot of them surrounding political ideology of the 20th century, but a lot of it World War II related. They're republishing controversial banned books type of stuff. They're publishing Hitler's speeches translated into English. They have a lot of different things like that going on. That's the main thing they do. They're not a Christian business. They're actually a secular business. That doesn't mean nobody involved are Christians of varying traditions from what
So one thing that's important to note, because that point's important, where he goes, it's not a Christian business, but there are certain people that work for them that come from various Christian traditions. Now, again, the video that I talked about that I'll post in the description afterwards of the guy that actually manned the table, that booth, and then he posted a whole stream before they posted this, he identifies himself as a Christian. He says so within. Now, the reason he seems to identify himself as a Christian has nothing to do with the gospel, and it seems to do very little to do with Christ. But he does identify himself as a Christian, mainly because a lot of the things within Christianity also in line with, I think he said, is like ethno-nationalist ideals, which is a weird take, but whatever. You can go watch that stream. We're not covering that. The question does come to mind, though, is why would they have a non-Christian business there? Now, they'll get into it here in a second about they didn't know a whole lot about them. But it's also a mischaracterization to say that Antelope Hill is only publishing banned books or bringing historic works into English. That's not the only thing. Like, their site specifically talks about them like having a leaning, like they're doing it's not like they're just publishing all sorts of old works or works that are all banned books. It's very authoritarian, fascist leaning books for the promotion of those books, not for educational purposes, but for the promotion of those ideologies. And so that's very important. That's not anything someone's assuming. That is their stated goal. American dissident, I think, is the wordage they use. This idea of they are deliberately reprinting these for the promotion of these ideologies. And so to say that like they just reprint these things and it's for educational purpose, that's not like their stated purpose is that they are American dissidents. And so it's one of those things where, again, whether Brian knew that beforehand or not, or knew that when he made this video, like I would hope that you would look a lot into this company before you made this video, I don't know, though. Again, he stated he's busy. This was posted maybe, I think, on a Monday. And so between how much time did you really have to look into the company between Sunday and Monday? I don't know. The point is their site, as well as the stream that the guy does that manned the table, give a much clearer picture on who they actually are as a company. And this company submits their name to fund this conference, to come to this conference, to have access to the New Christian Press people. And so, again, just a clarifying term here. Again, I don't know if Brian knows this or not. I have no idea. But you can go look, and it's very clear very quickly by their own words, as well as how they present themselves. This is a promotion of these ideologies, not simply a reprinting for educational purposes. That is a very important distinction.
I understand at this point, but that's their kind of thing. And so some of the usual suspects on Twitter, all of a sudden just organically discovered, meaning they were hovering over our every move, waiting for whatever thing they thought could most freak the most number of people out and paint us in the worst possible light that they could conceive of, that would be at least related to something that might possibly be true. And so they, look at these books that are being sold, Hitler's speeches, and then so that was one aspect of it.
Okay, so that's one aspect of it. Before we get on to anything else, so there are probably people that 100% do follow all of their accounts, all of these guys' accounts for the purpose of trying to find something that they do that's wrong. That being said, the guy that manned the Antelope Hill booth specifically noted that part of being at the conference, I guess being at the conference and having a table, is that there were no pictures or videos allowed after the conference started, for the protection of everyone's privacy, which is look, I have been to a ton of conferences. I know less than a handful of people that have put conferences on themselves. That has never been like a thing that they do. Like, you want people to take pictures. You want people to post about it. You want people to promote. It's free promotion for your conference. You want people to say how good of a time they had. You want to show everything you're doing. Like, it's free advertising. So to have something like that is a weird thing to have. Now, the Antelope Hill guy obviously did not listen to that or somehow found a way around it, but he's the one that posted the pictures, and those posts were discovered by at least an Eli, I don't know his last name, and Neil. Those were the two people I saw post them initially. And so they put it out, and people start asking legitimate questions. Again, not questions to be like, oh, the New Christian guys are a bunch of a bunch of mustache people, but to say that's a little weird, right? That's a weird thing to have at your conference. Now, some of the immediate replies were, well, maybe it's for educational purposes. Like, people would automatically came back and say, well, I can't read speeches from a particular time to know the context of them. Again, no one has a problem with reading speeches from a particular time so that you actually know the words used in the context of those words. That's not the stated purpose of Antelope Hill doing what they're doing, though. Okay? And so that's why it's an important distinction. If you have a bunch of historical works there that are from every time and place during a certain period of time for the sole purpose of education, okay, let's do that. I remember hearing a story a while back whenever, I forget what conference it was, but it was when N.T. Wright's A New Perspective on Paul came out. They gave the book out to everyone, not because they wanted everyone to be like, hey, read this, it's so amazing, but because they wanted to make sure that people knew about N.T. Wright's new book and the dangers of his writing on the New Perspective on Paul. And so it was a stated warning. It was a stated thing that this is the reason we're giving you this, so that you don't have to spend your own money to buy it and read it. We're giving it to you so that you can read it, so you can be prepared to answer the questions that may come from the publication of this book. It's an educational reason we're giving this to you. Now, obviously, the New Perspective on Paul and the essential speeches of Adolf Hitler are entirely two different things. But if you're giving someone something for educational purposes, that's entirely different than giving it to promote a certain ideology. I mean, it's night and day different. And so were people hovering over to try to ruin, New Christian Press's day? Look, probably. I have people that hate follow me all the time. I'm sure there'll be some comments on here that indicate that exact reality. But by and large, the majority of people that had an issue with the initial posting and go, that's a little strange, aren't existing online for the sole purpose of taking these guys down. There was legitimate questions for why would that even be there? It makes no sense. Like I Googled a couple of the books and the pictures. None of them are good. Again, if you want to use them from educational purposes to see the mindset of how people got there, how the country was able to go down a particular route, what particular ways others were talked about, all of these things are helpful, but it's one of those things where you do have to, it's not someone trying to ruin your day. It's someone saying, okay, at least answer what's going on. Now, they are going to get to that. But again, I think it's important. How you're framing this is really important.
But then related to that, the business, Antelope Hill, they, which we've learned since then, this was not something that we knew, but they have a flyer that they keep, that they like hand out with purchases. So if you buy a book, they're like, give you this flyer. And it's from their perspective, these are some businesses or people that are kind of aligned with us on something or other. Again, a secular business. So to them, it was a pretty broad coalition. Generally, I think they try to say like, these are groups that we consider pro-white. So that are like for the Western and nationalist view of preserving Western European culture, Anglo culture in America, and that sort of thing, which as we've spoken to many times, we think is a very important issue today in light of the full court press of multiculturalism and unlimited infinity immigration and replacement migration and the collapse of birth rates and all the things we've talked about a zillion times on the King's Hall. Why someone hears that and they go, that's crazy, but it's, if you just know our published works, it's like that we'd care about something like that for the reasons we've said before. And on this list, though, there were all sorts of stuff.
Okay, so it's important to note that he's not talking about the books they were selling. He doesn't seem to care about the books that were selling at all. He does seem to care about the flyer a little bit. Because in general, Brian says that they agree with the idea of the purpose of of what they're going for with the flyer. There are a couple things though that he says that he doesn't like.
Some of them like literal paganism, like tarot cards and stuff that we would never in a million years want to distribute to people or have our name associated with. Stuff that like even, hey, do you want to be pro-white? Well, then don't give them demon cards. Or like I think there's a trashy men's magazine that had some questionable imagery. People were saying it like linked to pornography sites. I actually think that was just a rumor. It's not true, but we had our guys go through and look at every link after the fact.
I think it was more like red pill adjacent.
Yeah, which is definitely from our perspective, there's probably stuff in it that we go, yeah, that's pornographic and we're not for that. So that's both of those things together. Those are kind of two separate things. This link issue on the flyer, and then the like actual publishing house and what they publish is another separate issue. I think we could talk about both. But really briefly, here's how they ended up there at the sponsor village.
Okay, so he's going to talk about both. The big issue he has with the flyer, in his own words, was simply that it had some tarot cards on it, right? So anything paganism, and then anything that was that had some. He already used it, so I'm sure the video will be flagged. So anything pornography related, and so those are the two big issues he has with it. He doesn't have any issue with any of the other stuff on the flyer. Now he said it here in a minute. He's going to talk about the books, But in general, the flyer, they had their guys go through the whole flyer. Now, to be fair, I don't have time to go double check all the links on the flyer to make sure that's all the issues that were there. Somebody else may have the time. So I'm just going to say, in general, okay, that was what was on the flyer. And the rest of it, I guess, is just he said it, pro-white companies. And so he doesn't have an issue with any of that. He does have an issue, though, with the tarot cards, the paganism, and the pornography. Now, how did they get there? And then after that, we'll look at the books that were on the table. Now, what he's about to say, if you haven't seen this video, I think is it's interesting in regards to there's obviously holes, and there have been for the last 4 years, holes in their process of actually vetting people to make sure. Now, again, the guys that are in this camp are very much about aligning around the same values. So you would think that there would be some sort of mechanism in place to ensure that no one gets in there that doesn't align with their values, right? If you go to a particular conference that has a very particular denominational leaning, no one's getting in that conference that has a different denominational leaning, okay? No, I mean, it's just, that's not going to happen, especially if it's theologically different. And then even if it's something like, is the SBC going to have an egalitarian female pastor booth in their conference? No, they're not going to do that. Are the Methodists going to have anything with patriarchy at their conference? Of course they're not, right? Is any liberal theology conference going to have anybody that's even remotely conservative? Of course they're not. They're going to vet all of the people coming. So how this happened the way he says it happened demonstrates a massive hole in their process.
And then here's what we think of that and what we've done. So they ended up there because when you're planning a conference of the size that we are, it's now 1,500 plus people. We sold out of literally every event that we had. We had to close because we were out of room. We added seats, we did everything we could, but we were sold out. One of our main guys who works at New Christendom Press has been in the event AV conference industry for more than a decade and has told us, an event this size usually has at least one and sometimes multiple full-time employees just doing the event for a year.
It's actually incredible to me how much work it is. The first year, when it was 200 people, okay, that's one thing.
It felt like an insane amount of work with that.
But now that the thing is 1,500 plus, I mean, multiple events across multiple days.
Yeah.
Just the amount of logistics and decisions that go into this process. I think you said at one point too, it's for months ahead of time.
Yeah.
You have 20 decisions
a day.
Yeah. That you're trying to sort through.
AV decisions, graphic design decisions, marketing decisions.
So it sounds like they should have listened to the guy that knows what he's talking about, right? I mean, if you have a person that says, hey, usually it's one person's entire job to do this for a whole year. Sounds like you should have listened to that guy. Now, on the other side of it, they're saying there was so much to do, 20 decisions a day. It sounds like to me that they just sort of started pencil whipping stuff because they were it's just one more decision, just yes, right? That's what it sounds like. It sounds like a group of people that were overwhelmed by the amount of work it was taking to do a project they were wanting to do on top of all the other projects they have, right? Him and his wife have a podcast. They have this podcast. He's pastoring a church. I'm sure that pastoring a church obviously comes with sermon writing. It comes with discipleship. It comes with counseling. It comes with all sorts of going to the hospital. How this man has time to breathe, I don't know. And so it's one of those things where it sounds to me like he was so busy, or they were so busy, or whoever's decision it was to make this decision was so busy that they were just sure, why not? Right? Assuming, again, I'm taking them at their word on all of this. So assuming that it's exactly how they're telling it, that sounds exactly like what happened. They were overwhelmed, and because they were overwhelmed, they got really sloppy on some stuff. That's what it sounds like.
We had a golf tournament, a full golf tournament with 60 participants. We had a full games competition with preliminary applications and a whole different venue.
Which, by the way,
was legit.
I mean, the golf tournament, I'm not going to say who won. It was our team. So just
It was the meme. Obama crowning
actually,
Obama.
yeah, we had somebody post where like it was Brian giving Brian an award at the award
And it was
ceremony.
pre-cut, Brian. That was pretty diabolical.
Actually, this was a huge miss on the conference.
Yeah.
The number of photos of us that are old that were used that is like pre-cut Brian.
Yeah, it was good for me to say, hold the line. hold the line.
You can't go back.
Maintain, dude.
After seeing that. Sorry to interrupt,
Yeah, so
but
anyway, in the course of a conference, the logistics are insane. I'm not, complaining. It just is what it is. It's worth the effort, but it's huge. We have, dozens and dozens of volunteers on taking security seriously for our attendees, protecting them physically, in setting up and tearing down and being good guests at the conference center and not trashing their facility, in making sure everybody knows where to go, getting the emails, getting registration, like all of this stuff. In conjunction with that, we have a team that is working on, because these are very expensive, and we genuinely, our conference is less than half the price of another conference I'm aware of that's similar in our space to come to, like less than half.
Yeah, and for like a whole family.
A lot of families are spending $1,000 to $1,500 on tickets alone. By the time all their kids get tickets, ours was $300 for the whole.
So this is one of the things that I say where they kind of just talk and talk and talk. It's the same thing of saying it was a lot of work, but they're using it was a lot of work to excuse the fact that felt like, out of everything that fell through the cracks, this one particular vendor fell through the cracks. That's how it's sort of built up, right? There's a lot of other things that could have went wrong. They don't name any other thing that went wrong, except like, because we were so busy, this guy got through.
Family.
Yeah.
Okay. So insane amount of work. We have a team that's working on sponsors, and a team that's like, hey, let's find Christian businesses who will come in and that we, would come bring a booth and sell a lot of it is more like, handmade ceramic goods, or, handmade soaps and different things like that. Great Christian businesses, which is what we focus on at New Christendom Press, is in finding sponsors who are good Christian businesses that we want to say, let's keep our dollars in the community of saints. If you're going to buy coffee anyway, you should buy coffee from Lux Coffee, because Lux Coffee.
So why was Antelope Hill invited then? They specifically say they're not a Christian business. And if we're trying to keep money within the family of God with only Christian businesses, why is Antelope Hill, clearly not Christian business. You said that. You said they're not a Christian business. Why were they invited in? Like, why were the only Christian business or non-Christian business invited in? Like, how was the one hole in the entire process this vendor only, right? How did everything else go off without a hitch? But it's just this one vendor that got through. That would be my one question, right? With all of this, because the way it's built up, and again, I get it. I've hosted events, not to this size. I know people that have hosted events to this size, and a lot of things typically go not quite how you would want them to go. But how did everything go off without a hitch except this one thing, right? You can't just say we were super busy, we were really busy, we did all of these other things right, and this just get to the point where you say, oh, we got this. This is how this happened.
Those are our guys, and that's a Christian who's going to pay his rent, and you're going to buy coffee anyway. So that's what we're all about with these. And we've got guys selling those, and we had over 150 inquiries, again, brought in more than 50 individual booths. And in that process, each one of those, first of all, Eric and I are not like, we actually now next year, every year after the conference, we do a whole week-long debrief. Like, what do we need to do better next year? And this is one of them now where it's like, yeah, Eric and I actually need to do a real look through before anything's approved on a sponsor table. And really, like, from one of the main reasons, even thinking about Antelope Hill being there, is like, because we actually do want to support Christian businesses and the Christian economy being there. And so, yeah, like, there's one where, again, there was no discrete, let's go deep dive and like, let's run down the amount of work to do that with 52 booths. If Eric and I were doing it, or like,
so it's not that they even have to do it. right? I mean, they're pastors, so they understand that a lot of things are delegated out. You have people, this is the whole purpose of deacons, administrative work, okay? So you should have someone, and it doesn't have to be a deacon in your church, but it would be someone that is responsible, that is knowledgeable, that you trust, that would go around. You said there was 115-ish, I don't know. He said 100-something people that said, hey, we want to sponsor, and then they had to whittle that down to 52. And somehow, as the whittling down process occurred, Antelope Hill still got through the initial cut and then got to be one of the 52. Someone had to look at those. I mean, there is somebody within New Christian Press that was responsible for looking at that list and not just saying, I guess we'll pick these, right? I mean, surely there was somebody there that actually went through and checked to verify what these businesses were and what they stood for. Like you don't even have to call the people. You just have to go to their site and see, okay, what do they say about themselves? What are they doing? What are they all about? You can do all of that. And Google even now summarizes in general, like, again, please don't do your conference checklist and check work via Google. But if you're going to be super lazy about it, that is at least one way to do it. And so it seems, again, you can't just use the excuse we were super busy and we couldn't do it. Now, guys, I know we're an hour in. We're only 20 minutes into an hour-long video. My apologies, but if you're new here, this is how it's done. If you've been here for a while, this is no surprise to you.
Even our team, it becomes sort of prohibitive. In the past, as we've been a little smaller and have been growing, it was much easier just to kind of assume like, hey, every booth that's there, they're going to be like our Christian business sponsors and stuff like that. But now, as it's gotten bigger, you do start to get people that we actually don't know that well. So Antelope Hill, we'll talk about those two issues, by the way, the books and about the flyer. But the way that they ended up on the list, just to be honest, like I don't know if this will probably make some people mad and probably disappoint other people's whatever. It wasn't like we're going and recruiting them or anything. My level of understanding of Antelope Hill before the conference, pretty much through the conference, was I own a book of theirs that I haven't yet read that I got as a gift at Christmas. And it's a book about, I'm actually not even 100%, it's like the Sword of Christ.
Yeah, it's mostly like, I have the book, I've read it.
Yeah.
Basically about like anti-Zionism. Like, what's the problem with Zionism in America? What's the truth?
I don't know. Haven't read it either. I looked it up on Google. Apparently, it does have some to do with Zionism, but it's very much more about ethnic centrism in regards to Christianity taking root, according to Google, within European societies, and how European societies should go back to basically the times of the Crusades in how we do things. That's the Google gist of it. No idea if that's true or not. But that's like me picking a car based on its color, right? And not looking at the engine, not looking at if the windows work, not looking at if it turns on. It's like, hey, that's that car looks cool. I think I should buy that car. That is a crazy way to go about something. I have a book from them. Sure, we should have them as a sponsor. I haven't even read the book, but we should have them as a sponsor. And again, he acknowledges that some people are going to be disappointed in that or mad about that. Rightfully so, because that is a really crazy way to decide who is there. And apparently he did have some decision in it, because he's like, oh yeah, I kind of know them because I have a book from them I haven't read yet. At best, it shows like a lack of involvement in the process. And two, if they're as busy as they say they were, which again, putting on something that large is going to be exhausting. There has to be, and again, to give them kudos where kudos is due, they said that there will be check processes in the future. It's good that you're learning from your mistakes, but you already had a guy that says, oh, like, we should have been doing this the whole time. So it's just a matter of, it's just weird. This is the reason for, they happen to be there.
Truth Behind the Movement, John Nelson Darby.
Okay, yeah.
That sort of thing.
So I have that book on my shelf, and I intend to read it. It looks like a good book and an interesting book. And like many other books, a book that you go through and you say, like, weigh the different aspects of it and say, this is interesting, informative, what's true, what do I agree with, what do I disagree with? You know, just a normal book. And I was aware that they did that. And then I was aware of that they republished basically. It's like you think about the Reformed Ressourcement movement where you go and find what did Junius say? What was, what has been only published in Latin?
Again, we already discussed this when you talked about it before. This is not the same thing. Okay. Because, well, hold on. It is somewhat the same thing in regards to the whatever reform book company he's talking about. I recognize them. I just can't remember their name. They purposely publish reformed works because that is the thing that they are promoting. Antelope Hill only publishes these type of works because that is the type of work they're promoting. So in that regard, yes, they are doing a very similar thing because they are republishing works of people they agree with and want other people to read and believe and accept. In that way, they are the same. But they are not the same in regards of they're just simply bringing things to you and saying, hey, read this and, draw, just educational. That's not what they're doing.
Or in a language that hasn't yet reached our publications, and then like Reformation Heritage or Banner or whatever, they're going to go try to edit and bring to publication again these books that have been lost. And I was aware that they kind of did that with like, I think I had seen something related to the Spanish Civil War, but then also a lot of like what did Hitler say? What actually happened in the Third Reich?
So he did see. He knows it's pro Mustache Man. Like he knows that. I mean, he said pro and then he diverted, but it is pro. It is very much for that.
Was the economic reality? What were the speeches being given in their actual content? And so that was pretty much the level of awareness. And then, at some point they were on our list and it was like, there you go.
Yeah, I think we had maybe like 150 companies reach out. You got 52 spaces.
And a lot of those just didn't end up
through it. I think the other thing to say too, as we're going through this, like we take full responsibility for the people that are there.
Okay, so here's the thing. When I said, however I worded it before, hold on. Where's my mouse? Okay, let me go to my profile because I want to make sure. I read it at the beginning and I have literally forgot my own words. When I said it's long, but it's very helpful. They take accountability where needed, right? This is what I'm talking about. They at least take accountability for saying, hey, we're responsible for everybody that's there. They could have easily thrown whatever person does the list under the bus. They do they do say, hey, we're at the top of the chain here. We're the one that ultimately is responsible for it. It is our bad that this got through. Okay? That's what I mean by they take accountability for it. Now, they seem to only take accountability for it in regards to the things they disagree with, which were the paganism and the pornography. The rest of it, they don't really take accountability for, right? And they don't think they need to take accountability for it because they don't find it to be problematic. Now, I guess it matters, at this point, surely they know what Antelope Hill stands for. But at least they take accountability for it. Now, I also said they stand 10 toes down on what they believe and being transparent about what occurred. They're not, what I meant by that is they're not trying to hide it, right? It is helpful to know what they actually believe, which again comes back to what I said before. It'll be very interesting when they say, hey, listen to your elders. If the elders say, hey, you shouldn't listen to Brian or the guys from New Christendom because of the things they do stand 10 toes down on. So from what I get from one of the tweets that Eric put out, he would assume that if your elders tell you not to listen to him, then they're leading you straight to hell. I don't want to misquote him. You'll have to go look it up. I'm not going to spend the time. We're already really far into this video, but it was something along those lines. Let's get back to the video though.
Every one of them. I'm not trying to throw our staff on it. This is just here's a hole in our process in saying we actually as we've gotten bigger now, we're going to make sure we look at everybody here. So let's just, I think, talk about those two issues with Antelope Hill and what we actually think about them. And again, our goal is literally, this is going to sound crazy. Our goal is just to tell you the truth about what we think about various things.
Which, again, admire that. Definitely disagree with them. But you have, if I'm going to give kudos to people for at least being honest, I'd rather you be straightforward with it than trying to hide it.
Which is kind of what we do here at the King's Hall. And it often gets us in trouble. Like, we had a recent clip about Black culture, which was very popular in the Black community. And popular in the sense that a lot of people in the Black community shared it, which I took to mean popularity. And we did get protested for several months as a church because of this clip. And it started with us adjudicating the issue of like, hey, are we a church that doesn't allow anybody other than a white person to be a member? And we said, no, we actually have Black member. We have we're in Utah, so we have quite a large white membership, but we also have other racial makeup in our church as well. So we said, no, they just can't practice Black culture. Here's what we mean by that.
So it doesn't really matter, right? If you have a diverse, there are going to be places that you do not have a diverse makeup of people. And so just because your church is 100% white, because of your particular area, it doesn't mean that you wouldn't welcome other members. The question is, and the reason that question was probably brought up, I don't know. Again, I have very little to do with these people outside of Brian's music. But my assumption is the reason that may have been brought up was because there was already people asking the question of, like, where do you guys land on the whole race thing? Because that wouldn't even be a question. I mean, for a normal church, that's not even a question. So something had to have been said beforehand that triggered that question. And so his answer was what he's saying here, something about Black culture.
Like, they couldn't be in like a ghetto gangbanging type of thing, obviously. So that was like a 60-second moment in a whole episode, and then people freaked out about it. But what that was is just we were telling the truth about, and if you actually know the state of the discourse right now, what I just said would be controversial among some right-wing circles for not being pro-white enough. It would be controversial in many more circles for being allegedly racist or, whatever scary word you want to throw at us. But we try to just tell you what we actually think.
Yeah.
So what do we actually think about those two issues, starting with the project of publishing?
Okay, so basically he tries to intro the clip or talking about the publishing by saying, yeah, we're not that because we would allow somebody to come in that was of a different race. They would just have to not act like the stereotypical people they come from, basically. And so to that, though, I would say, like, all right, well, there's a lot better ways to word that than he did. Because here's the thing. I come from a place where there are a lot of what you may call rednecks. And there are certain redneck characteristics that are very close or mimic what he would probably define as, like, Black culture. And so the question then becomes, like, what's your criteria for church membership then? Because if you're basing it on, like, how people act is a weird basis, if that's the sole basis you're basing it on, of how their cultural sort of actions. Because membership should be based on belief and then application of that belief in one's life. And so it really doesn't matter in regards to a cultural attachment to sort of the cultural customs that you have, in as much as the question of, do those cultural customs that you have, are they antithetical to the scripture and how you're supposed to live, right? So if there's a cultural practice where you worship dead ancestors, obviously that cultural practice has to be denied if you are going to become a Christian and come into the church. Whereas the cultural practice of, like, what you eat maybe, or some of the ways you celebrate events in people's lives, such as graduations or marriages, like, some of those things are more culturally tied to you, but they're not antithetical to the scriptures. And so in that way, it doesn't really matter in regards to if, black culture, white culture, Asian culture, it doesn't even matter, because your cultural thing is not tied to, is that cultural thing antithetical to the scriptures? And so there's a better, more pastoral way to even answer that question, than as long as they aren't ghettoing out, right? And so it seems that he's more concerned about appeasing people that have questions about his view on race on both sides, rather than just stating our criteria for membership is based on gospel truths, not cultural ties, unless those cultural ties are antithetical to the gospel. It's just a clearer way. And at that point, you only make the right people upset. And so it's just weird. It's very, very weird that's the wording that was used. Now, again, maybe in the rest of the episode, he does cover that. I don't know. Again, I don't watch his stuff. And so it's one of those things that if you are online a lot and you notice a lot of your stuff is going viral, as Brian apparently does, you are, or you at least should be, more careful with your word usage, not because you're trying to appease the mob, but because you want to make sure you represent Christ well. And because you're always going to make people mad, right? There is nothing you're going to say that isn't going to make someone somewhere mad. But you're not trying to please any of those people anyway. You're trying to honor Christ and be an ambassador well for the kingdom. If that makes people mad, fine. But at least your grounding and foundation and roots are in the gospel, and you can't be accused of anything but that. Like if you call me like you're too much of a Christian because you did it, fine, okay. It's where you're grounding and how you word it that matters.
Hitler's speeches, historical ressourcement from World War II. Now, we've talked about this a lot, that World War II, both world wars really, much of the 20th century, but World War II especially, has come to be, in a certain telling of it, the founding myth of the liberal order that arose in the late 1940s and on down to today.
Now, I'm going to let him just keep going because he goes on for a second, but I want to say something before he gets into this. The framing is that it is the telling of the history that he's concerned of. And so he wants to make sure people have access to works that give primary source, that he provides primary source works to people so they can read the words of the people themselves rather than being told what other people say. And so that's fine. But again, understand, Antelope Hill is not publishing works for the purpose of context. Their stated purpose is to be dissidents. They're not doing this for educational purposes. They're doing it for the promotion of the ideology. And so if Brian's whole purpose is to make sure people are educated, there's an entirely different way to go about this video, to say, hey, I understand they're not for education, and it's our bad for letting that slip through. We take responsibility for letting that slip through. We thought they were one thing and they were another because we didn't do enough research on them, and we're sorry for that. We're not sorry that, people can have access to these works, but we are sorry that we had a company come in that is pro this ideology, and it won't happen again. We do believe that you should read these things for educational purposes, but we're not for the promotion of these ideologies. That's not what he's saying, though. He's saying they're here and all they do is print these works. That's just simply not true. Now, I'm going to let him go on for a while because, again, I know this is taking forever to get through. So I'm going to let him go on for quite some time. But that's how it's framed.
That dominates our society. Andrew Isker gave a talk at our conference. We'll post it. And he went into, it was really, really good, careful look at why this matters, like why this period matters, because his fundamental thesis, and I think he's correct, is that World War II marked the end of the Westphalian order of nations, where you had the Peace of Westphalia, and basically nations that are largely homogenous racial ethnic groups ruled by monarchs and mainly Christian. And the end of that order And it was replaced with a globalist liberal order that is multicultural, open border, feminist, egalitarian. This gives, it's like the culmination of everything that we have today in liberalism and egalitarianism in a national level. All of our immigration stuff, like it's downstream of this. So we've said this many times before. We do believe that the events surrounding the world wars, especially World War II, are very, very important historically for anybody today who wants to know how to live in the world, wants to know why the world is the way that it is today, what the watershed events are that got us here, what the main issues are. You kind of need to know, like, what was Churchill up to? What was FDR up to? What was Hitler up to? What was Stalin up to? What was Mao up to? What was, and even going further back, but the tentacles on the same kind of monster, what was Gloria Steinem up to? What was Elizabeth Cady Stanton up to? Which the Longhouse book that we've been working on.
When you can think of it too like this, like if I was going to study like Soviet era, I would certainly read the speeches of Stalin.
Yeah, like
I would want to know everything.
If you go to any series,
Again, it's not an issue of reading or having knowledge of. It is the promotion of, and that's not what's being dealt with, right? They would not have, and if it would have happened, right? Let's say something comes through and a egalitarian company gets through because it falls through the cracks, and they're there. They, if that was the exact same thing, then would they equally say, like, we think you should read the works of the egalitarians so you can understand their viewpoint. We don't agree with them, obviously, but we think you should at least read their works so you know where they're coming from, the culture that egalitarianism sort of grew up in, and so that you can understand how it took over. Again, and he is very clear about that. You need to know about World War II because World War II affects everything after it. 100%. No, I don't know anybody that disagrees with that statement, but that's not the overarching sort of call being raised here. It isn't you can't know anything about history or you shouldn't know anything about World War II or what came from it, right? We have most of progressive theology comes because of the way that exegesis and the Bible are viewed after the fact of World War II. And so you have a lot of terrible things come from the results of World War II. Don't disagree with that. That's not sort of the elephant or antelope in the room, as you would say. It is a company that gets through the cracks that is pro the promotion of these ideologies. That's the issue. Now, again, I'm glad that they take accountability for the fact that this company it slipped through the cracks. They didn't know a whole lot about them beforehand. They know more about them now. I appreciate the fact that they take accountability and say, hey, it's our bad for having them with a flyer that did tarot cards and pornography. Hey, 100% glad the accountability is taken. But the way this is being framed is we want people to have historic works. Fantastic. That's not what the company is about, right? Just as there's another way to word, do you allow black membership? There's another way to word that's far more pastoral and far more frankly honest than just saying like, well, this culture comes along with it. In the same way, there's another way to word, we dropped the ball here, and this is what we do believe, and this is what we don't believe about, this is how we do align with the company and how we don't align with the company. That's not what we're getting from this, though.
This college, you will read the speeches of Hitler. You will read these, this kind of material. And for the record, I have read, just as one example, the entire memoirs of the Second World War that Winston Churchill wrote, his own words about, and it's like, he's very wordy. It's like 6 volumes, something. It's very long. I've read it twice because I want to know and that's not what's true. It's what does Winston Churchill think happened?
Yeah.
Very helpful to know that. So when I read The Last Lion, the 3-volume autobiography of him, and I've read 3 to 4 biographies of Churchill. And
So what would be helpful, right? If we're using his own words, would for him to say, hey, I read Mein Kampf it's not that it's true, but it's Hitler's words. It's not that I agree with it, but this is what Hitler says happened, right? That's equally like to defer to the Churchill thing is weird when that's not what Antelope Hill publishes. And if we're going on, you need to know the historical record of the day, then deal with what Antelope Hill is actually publishing. And that to deflect to Churchill is contextual only in regards to I personally read the things of the time. And so it's an interesting thing to go to when it's not actually dealing with what they are publishing. The only thing that's really been denounced here, which again, kudos to them, is the tarot cards and the pornography. But we haven't actually dealt with the reality that Antelope Hill does very specific things.
It can actually contextualize, because I know his words, what was happening. The same can be done for Germany and the Nazi regime and its rise and its big political thinkers and Adolf Hitler himself and all this stuff. And what happens when you actually do that work is, I think, two things. One, the Nazi and the Hitler of history, basically it falls apart in a lot of ways, because as happens, we oversimplify things and we mythologize things, particularly these things. And so there's Hitler and the Nazi of popular social imagination that is, it has aspects of truth, but it's a caricature, it's a cartoon. Right?
Yeah, even when you factor in things like you've read Churchill, but like it was weird, like reading like the glowing things that he said about him early on.
Oh yeah. And Churchill. And
now again, to their credit, this is something that everyone should do. Now, do you have time to do it? You should probably make time to do it, because history is almost always oversimplified. If you talk to any sort of anthropology major or historical major, or people that have actually, like, that is their job, they will tell you that there's not usually like a black and white answer, that there are lots of things that progress through history that affect each other. And if like one of these things would not have happened, then the things that come after it would not have happened either. And it's very interesting to see really providentially how things fall in place throughout time and history in order for something else to happen. So for example, I am by no means an expert on history, but it was interesting to learn that if Hitler had not been put in prison for trying to overthrow the government at a particular time, he would not have had, I think it was like 8 or 9 months that he was in prison. He would not have had that time to actually write Mein Kampf, and it would not have gone on to become the pinnacle work of his entire life. And so it's interesting how those things fall into place. The only reason he's in prison for the time he is because he has a judge that goes really light on him. And so he has access, because of other people being fans of him, to typewriters so he can write the thing. Like, it's all sorts of different pieces that fall into place that enable other things to happen. All that to say that history is complicated, history is interesting, and we should know history. Again, Antelope Hill does not just give works in order to know history, though. That's the pivotal thing that we're not addressing here, and we're sort of going off on another tangent on. There's no place in this video where they actually address that I'm aware of. Maybe we'll hit it again. Again, it's been a few days since I've seen it, but instead of like an hour long of this, it's easy to say we agree with the fact that people should read these works, which they are saying that for historical purposes. It's another thing to say we do not align with this particular company in their purpose for printing these works.
Glowing things Churchill said about Churchill, unsurprisingly, you know? And the things he left out were, so like, you know, when Churchill's kind of working through the bombing of civilians, which Churchill kind of initiated in the war, killed hundreds of thousands of civilians in firebombing, intentionally targeting women and children and non-military targets, which just historically speaking, then Axis powers respond to. Both sides did really bad, terrible, ugly things. That was one of them. So Churchill, obviously in his memoirs, doesn't call himself a genocidal civilian child murderer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you can't just read him. You have to read it all. So this caricature sort of, it crumbles, it changes, and then a real historical snapshot appears where that is always going to be in dispute, because history is always in dispute among serious historians and among lay people. What you can do is you can remythologize in another direction, that whole era. We've talked about this before as well, and end up, coming to this core conviction where you're like, Nazism and Hitler and all these guys were unqualified heroes, and it was all like, contra mundum, Hitler contra mundum and all that. And what you'll find is that there is, in the conditions in 1930s Germany, some of the stuff that was going on with the communists and with Bolshevism and with pornography and the first transgender clinic there in the 30s in Germany that you talked about in your speech.
Yeah, Magnus Hirschfeld.
In passing.
Frankfurt School's going on.
That the Nazis closed. And then it came to New York City, where it continued to operate. So again, these things matter for our current date. That's the origin story there. So you'll say, this is a strange sentence as a public school educated kid like me to say, the Nazis did something good there. Or you start to look and say, the popular support for Hitler was in the 90s in terms of voting percentages of Germans. So
So it'd be interesting to see, again, not that he has to cite his sources here, because that would be unreasonable to ask of somebody in a video like this. But if I remember correctly, it was a 3-party split, and he actually only got 30-something% of the vote. That was what one of the, again, it was a video I watched, historical video about the rise of Hitler in Nazi Germany, or in Germany at the time. And so obviously somebody got it wrong, either the person he read or the video that I watched. But my point being is that even with all of that history in flux and how history is retold, it's important to, again, know the context and everything of that of the words being spoken and what's going on. That is not the concern. See, this is my point. If you're going to issue a video talking about the concern or the issues being raised about the conference and that vendor being there, there are ways to say this that doesn't usurp the point. He's right, 100%. That it matters to know what both sides are saying about each other and what both sides say about themselves, because everybody's always the hero of their own story. But when you watch both of these, and again, give him credit for what credit is due, when he says, hey, both sides did absolutely terrible things. Of course they did. At that point, it is the point of the pastor, or in this case, the podcaster or whatever, to the Christian podcaster to say, okay, so what is the Christian apologetic in how we deal with these things? This is many of the apologetics of the early church do this. They take things that are going on in Rome and they say, this is how we as believers are dealing with what is happening in Rome. And so this is how they decide early on. These are some of the earliest apologists, that they are nonviolent. This is also how they explain to the empire why they're taking babies off the sides of cliffs that are abandoned. This is also why they talk about why they don't worship idols, why they don't offer incense. All of these things are simply apologetics, the explanation of this is how we deal with the world around us. And so when you read historical works, it's one of the things to say, okay, well, obviously, this is how Christians responded then. Was it right or wrong to Scripture? And how should we respond to both these actions that were taken and if this were ever to happen again? And so it's one of those things where it's really, you should definitely know the history so that you can react to it if it were to happen again, as well as be able to communicate where the pitfalls were and where the wins were when it happened initially. Again, as much as possible, using Scripture as a foundation for that. Which it's not what we're doing. Again, I get what he's saying. You need to know the history, absolutely. But we're being evasive to the overall point of people had an issue not with the publications of the books, but with the attitude of the publisher that brought the books there.
Christian Germany voted 90+% for this guy. And so if you say, if the cartoon is true, then all those people must be the worst people who've ever lived. But obviously they're not. You find out that history is complicated. Most of us are not great men. Most of us are products of our background culture. And we probably, most of us would have been whatever the norm was in that day. Okay? So when you read all of that stuff, some of it evaporates. So in terms of a publishing company, hypothetically like Antelope Hill, publishing those materials, I don't have a problem with them. And I don't have a problem with them knowing that some of the publishers themselves, and maybe even a lot of people who read them, will come to conclusions, whether they are to the left or to the right of me, that differ in how they interpret and land the plane. You know, from Hitler was a Christian prince to the cartoon was true and this is all propaganda and whatnot. So that's the process of discourse and why we think it's important in a nutshell. We've said this before. That's why when it crossed the desk.
Oh, hold on. He's going to say more.
In a sense, like that 2 seconds of, you know, here's the sponsors that we've, you know, added this week. And I was like, oh yeah, I have that book from them. I think they do this. Okay. So full responsibility. Anybody super pissed, don't be pissed at any of our other speakers. Don't be mad at our staff. Like you can be mad at me and Eric, add it to our tab. And
we need one of those, like, please take a number.
Please take a number. Yeah. So the current wait time, it's after I'm dead, you're still waiting. In the billions of years, you know, and I'll also be clear, some of it deserves, some of it not, as is always true.
So again, I appreciate that there's accountability taken in regards to some of it. Some of the stuff lobbed at them is true, while they say some of it isn't. I also appreciate that he's like, look, as long as he says he's fine with them publishing it because he's okay with them as a publishing company, because they are okay if somebody comes down to agree with them or not agree with them. Now, I'm not entirely sure that Antelope Hill is actually okay with that, based upon the stream of the individual that manned the table. He seems pretty secure in his beliefs that everyone should believe like him, and you're some sort of words that I won't say if you don't agree with him. But so I'm not sure Antelope Hill actually holds to a stance that Brian says they hold to. But at the same time, I think it's a bit hypocritical in the sense that he would probably not say the same thing and again, we'll just use this example because we used it before, of an egalitarian publishing company coming in and doing the same thing. Would he say if an egalitarian publishing company happened to fall through the cracks and they get there and they're passing out patriarchal stuff and pro-egalitarian stuff, and they're like, look, we're cool if you come down with us or if you stay patriarchal, but it's just we want you to read the material, even though we definitely want you to become egalitarian. Would that still be the same stance? Now, I know it's not apples to apples there, but the point being that I don't, given what I've seen before, I don't think he would be okay with that, and he shouldn't be okay with that. That's my point, is that the company being there, even if the company is okay with you coming down on either side of it, there's 2 knocks against them already, according to his own standard. 1, they're not a Christian company, so they probably shouldn't be there in the first place. 2, they're not passing these materials out as just educational. They're doing it for a stated ideological purpose. And so those 2 knocks enough should be like, look, I get what you're doing. I don't even have a problem with you passing things out for educational reasons, but you don't align with us, and so you shouldn't be here, and I don't want you here. That's where we're not coming. That's where we reach different conclusions. So hold on, let's get back to it, because again, we're only halfway through, and I'm sorry, guys. I talk a lot.
I am neither as bad as the people who hate me think I am in some way, in the ways that they think I'm bad, nor as good as the people who like me think I am in the ways they think I'm good. The Lord knows I'm comfortable. I told everybody, as this was blowing up, the two people I care about, I care about what God thinks, and then I care about what the Session of Refuge Church thinks, and it's in that order. And obviously my wife and the people and what that represents. But I don't care what the marionette, controversy.
Hey, we actually agree on this. There's about 6 people I care about their opinion, and the rest of you can go kick rocks. Right? So, I mean, we agree on that. I mean, and to be fair, it's basically the same. It's the same sort of mentality. I care about what God thinks. I care about what my elders of the church think. I care about what my family thinks. The rest of you, you don't have any real say in it. And nor do I expect, let's be clear, if you've made it an hour and a half into this video, I don't expect you to care what I think. This video is just me going through going, hey, these are the things that like I would definitely do this differently. I would definitely handle this in a different way. Brian and Eric and New Christian Press can do whatever they want, believe whatever they want. The question is that they have like a lot of influence though. And so it's one of those things where what they do say does affect people. Now I've tried to be as clear as possible. I don't know why any of you listen to me. If you do listen to me, if you find it helpful, fantastic. But I am not here I am a man yelling into the void about my opinions about sermon reviews and reactions. I don't I would much prefer you take the advice of your elders than me.
Farmers on Twitter think. So I want people to know even given that, I want people to know what I actually think. So there's what I think about the publication side of things.
Yeah, I would even just add, we talked to people even from, Moscow and New St. Andrews, and they said, we actually read Hitler's speeches in class.
Yeah.
I remember in high school reading Mein Kampf. Obviously, that doesn't mean you agree with every single word.
No, but it's an important thing to do.
People have found it valuable to look at that.
Anything on that, like that side of the thing that you think I'm missing?
Now, to be fair, again, the assumption to be taken that there's 2 ways you could take what Eric said there. One, he said, obviously you don't agree with every word. Obviously you don't agree. If you've ever read it's not great. It's an inside look of a very troubled person. But he said people find it valuable. Now, you could say that some of the things he means that some people find what Adolf said valuable, or people just find it valuable to read it. I don't know which way he means that. We'll give him the most gracious way that means that, educationally it's valuable to read.
No, I think that's accurate. Obviously,
and some people hate what I just said and be like,
it's a super tough thing because this is such a charged issue.
Just look at the response.
Like before this even happened, right? Like everybody wants to call you a Nazi anyway. This has been part of the leftist rhetoric. You're going to get attacked for that. You're going to get attacked.
So to be clear on this too, there's a huge difference between being called that because it's like it's slur to be used. It's one thing to be called that because somebody's trying to slur you because you hold some value that they don't like. It's another thing to be called that when you purposefully print and promote actual materials that support that ideology and are like, yes, I think you should believe that because I believe that. That's like a literal Nazi versus just being called one. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, there's a difference there. And both of these individuals are smart enough to know that. There is a difference between someone saying you are that because you won't call, men women versus you are that because you literally think that, Adolf was a genuinely interesting, smart guy and we should do everything he said. Like that, those are different things, entirely different things.
For anti-Semitism because we don't like dispensationalism, for example.
Yeah.
And what we've tried to do, I think, throughout that process is just...
Also, to be fair to him here, like he is trying to make some distinction that he's not a Mustache Man follower simply because he doesn't agree with dispensation. He thinks dispensationalism is terrible, which... Agreed. I think it's not a great eschatology, but he says you can't just say because I think that's a bad theology that you hate, the Jews or whatever. Now, that's not what Antelope Hill believes, though. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. You could cut this whole hour down to like 15 minutes and just be like, we appreciate what they publish. for the stated purpose of you need to know historical works. We disagree with them because we're not literal Nazis like they are. Like that's a different thing to say they print, promote, and agree with these works versus we are glad they print them so that people can read them, but we don't agree with the ideology. It's super simple.
Let's think biblically and clearly.
Yeah.
Let's not give in to the mob-like cancel culture. Well, because we really do live under this gaze of post-war consensus.
Yeah.
And to your point earlier, like it's become a religion.
Yeah. And here's
I think I said this to you. I said, I think that there's a lot of people, if you like denied some orthodox doctrine about the Trinity
or like the second coming of Christ,
you would catch less heat than you do for saying like, hey, let's read a wide range of things and come to wise conclusions.
Or if you said like, for example, the Jews have been prominently involved in every ism that has dominated the 20th century, feminism, liberalism, as well as pornography, many things. And everyone would freak out at you. And then you'd said, I'm sorry, I'm just quoting Dennis Prager.
Right.
Like the most middle of the road, himself a Jew, or like things that so when we say things about, well, I think there's a Jewish culture issue and religious issue. And again, I'm just telling you what I think is true. I'm not trying to swindle you or fake out or whatever. I'm just going to tell you what I actually think, right? Yeah. So that's our habit. That's what we try to do. And some people will violently disagree with some of the things that we think are true on these issues. And I'm okay with that. I might even think you're so wrong that I wouldn't want to, that we obviously couldn't respect each other. That's fine.
Right.
But what happens is that the absolute freak out related to some of this stuff ends up proving the point that, yeah, you could be a full preterist and you would get less freak out from Reformed Christianity. That is a literal formal heresy denying creedal Christianity. And people will see somebody go full preterist and they'll write a mild blog post 3 months later.
Now, to be fair, he's right on that point. All right, he's right on that point. The only people that catch a lot of flack are the Mormons for good reason, by the way. But he is right on that regard, that there is more of a reaction. Now, I would say I think that he may be missing some of the point here in regards to there are things you say and positions you maybe put yourself in sometimes that garner you more attention from certain individuals because of that. Now, again, that might just go back to you don't call men women when they want to be called women, and that's why you have those eyes on you, and that's fine. But there are certain people that will watch you more closely because of the things you've said in the past, which is why, again, if you aren't given the benefit of a doubt, not always, but sometimes, it's because people already assume something of you because you've already said things that make the assumption. So to be, in that regard, to be a bit self-aware, I think that when you get asked the question, can a black person be a member of your congregation, the only reason that question is being asked is because there's an assumption that they couldn't based on something you've said before maybe. I don't know. I don't watch the content, so I don't know what would have maybe brought that question to bear. But whenever you then give the response that you give, and then maybe a number of other things that your people you're aligned with and the things they say or the things maybe you yourself have said, whenever there are then pictures of Adolf Hitler's speeches being posted from your conference, there's already a catalog of questionable things that come before that to where people then don't say, man, this was probably a mistake. Like there's no way that they knew this was going to happen or these people were bringing these books. Like this has to have been a massive mistake versus people going, oh, well, this just confirms what we already thought. You know what I'm saying? And so it's one of those things where there's a whole bunch already behind this that makes people possibly jump to the conclusion of this only confirms our suspicions versus this is a total mistake. And so I think that maybe in this case, and again, Brian can if he ever watches this video and you make it an hour and 40 into it, I highly doubt. But I would just say maybe be a bit more self-aware. Because maybe if there is a point where somebody has to take a number because of the number of things people were mad at you about, there's a reason that maybe somebody jumped to a conclusion versus assumed the better. I don't know, perhaps. Are there people that are probably out here to destroy him at all costs? I guarantee it. Are there people out here that are making conclusions based on prior statements? I think that's more likely than not. No one, for example, no one is ever going to assume that I am pro female pastor, right? And so it happened not too long ago. Whenever I posted a sermon of a woman preaching, and I did a sermon review on him, no one goes, "Oh, Michael must be like pro this." They go like, why are you reviewing this when you disagree with it? And somebody came in the comments right after and said, hey, people send in suggestions that he's probably covering it. And that's exactly why, right? And so when you have people that know your content, they're either going to give you the benefit of the doubt or they're going to jump to a conclusion. And so it's just one of those things where, I mean, you can't prevent that. I'm just saying I think that's why maybe that's happening in some cases.
But someone shares a picture of Hitler's speeches being republished at a New Christendom press conference, and oh my word, if we don't have a full denunciation of Hitler and all his works by 7:15 p.m., Brian and Eric are literally Satan. And I'm like, my brothers and sisters in Christ, you are proving our point about why we need to talk about this issue and how charged it has become, and maybe why that is in terms of founding mythology for the liberal order that we all swim in and have been discipled by deeply. Okay, so
that's the historical.
One other note on that, we shared this in the conference, something we've done at our church that I think has been really helpful in navigating a lot of these things. And I'm not tooting our own horn. Like how do we deal with this? We've been thinking about that for like 2 years. The race and in World War II and all this stuff. We decided that what we were going to do is start a new thing called a town hall that we don't record, we don't put online. Like it's not publicly distributed. It's for our people. And we introduce a topic. Sometimes it's the last one was parenting and child discipline. But we did 2 in a row on
Which
race.
is also, by the way, shockingly controversial sometimes.
Oh yeah. We did 2 in a row on race and related stuff. Race, nationalism, kind of this. We had been prepping in men's book groups. We had very free discussions about a lot of this stuff. Read materials, critiqued them, went through them together as men. And then in the congregation on a Tuesday night, we said, let's do a town hall. It's 90 minutes. I gave a 15 to 30 minute intro each time on race. Eric did the one on parenting. And then we had 60 plus minutes of just anybody have a question? Raise your hand. Okay, what's your question? And then we had a dialogue. Like I would answer the question, or sometimes we have a panel of guys from the pastorate or other guys as well. And we would just, what are you actually thinking about this? And what was crazy about it is we said, we're not going to make anything taboo. We're not going to make anything transgressive. Like where if you ask a question about Hitler, it's really edgy to do. And some people do it just because it's edgy. And we're saying, let's take all of that power out of it, the transgressive power of it, by just opening it up and saying, let's talk about it. And we're not going to struggle session you. If we think you're sinning, we'll tell you. If we disagree with you, we'll tell you. I will tell you what I think about anything in a church. You could ask me the most controversial question in this setting as a churchman, and I would say, here's exactly what I think. This is what I think. I don't know enough. I don't have an opinion, or, whatever. And the net result was that by the end of the second one, this is less than 3 total hours of this, we were kind of running out of stuff to talk about because everyone was like, yeah, I mean, there maybe we have different people who think different things about some of these issues, but we were like, yeah, but at the end of the day, like, what does it have to do with me being your brother or friend here? We have pretty broad agreement on a lot of this stuff. For the younger members of the congregation and stuff, like, I'm sorry, all of the Gen X and up, you guys think that in trying to get everybody to freak out about somebody reading Hitler speeches, you think that you're like persuading people? I'm telling you, young millennials and Zoomers and under, they are unfazed by the frank discussion of these issues. And they shouldn't be. They're actually throwing off something that you've been manipulated and controlled by.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anyone's trying to get other people. I mean, maybe they are. Maybe they are trying to get people to freak out about it. And, I mean, let's just give it the benefit of the doubt. There are people online that deliberately post things to get other people riled up. Sure. I'm sure that happens. I mean, engagement farming is a thing after all. Now, should people be unfazed? No, they shouldn't. I think here, I don't disagree with him, is that frank discussion is 100% what I think younger people other than me, right? So I'm 43. Honestly, people my age, 43, want open and frank discussion as far as I can tell. I don't really run into a lot of people that don't want that. Again, we're sort of skirting so if we're going on Eli, whatever his last name is, actual concerns, and we're going to what on Neil Shinvy's actual concerns are, they don't seem to be that Antelope Hill is there. Well, I don't know. I guess this is where I would agree with Brian as well. They do seem more concerned, jumping to the conclusion that there is primary source literature being sold at the conference. Now, I think posts or tweets, whatever you want to call them, after that are more in line with Antelope Hill themselves, are pro all of the things that are pro, and that seems to be the issue after the fact that those books come out. Now, again, to my point before, I think the reason they jumped on it initially is because there's probably a catalog of things beforehand that they were questionable about, and that sort of added to the list. But even after the fact, they started going after Antelope Hill and not New Christendom Press. The concern was that New Christendom Press had Antelope Hill there and wasn't saying anything about Antelope Hill. And to be fair to Eli and Neil and other people that have posted about it, they still really haven't said a whole lot in this video other than the two things that they're against that Antelope Hill was promoting, not their published works, but in their flyer. And so we've sort of skirted the issue of who that publishing company is as a company. And I know we're only 40 minutes into an hour-long video, so we're coming on the closing end here, but I don't remember anything actually being stated about a lot of this has been about what they do, which is great. It's great to know how they operate as Refuge Church as well as New Christendom Press. That's fantastic and great to know. And they have, within this video, kind of said, hey, like, we don't hold to these certain beliefs and we're not these people. It's all great. That is all fantastic, and it's very good. But we haven't talked about the fact that the company that is in here is pro all of those things. We haven't addressed that at all.
This is an area where older generations, and some in the younger generations too, have been so programmed to not ask a question, is this true or not, but to ask the question, am I allowed to discuss this or not?
Yeah, it is
There's
interesting because
fear.
When the conversation started, like on the race issue,
Yeah.
there was a little bit of heat.
Yeah.
But once we all talked through like what we actually believe, what we think is biblical, how it would apply in our local context.
Yeah.
It was so interesting because by the second one,
Yeah.
people were like done asking questions. They're like,
Kinda quiet.
Can we talk about something else? Like
Yeah.
it takes that transgressive edge and it makes it where it's like, yeah, we talked about that. It's really not that big of a
Yeah.
deal.
So just
It's not that exciting.
Just so you know, like our people like going online and going, oh my word, there was a Hitler book. Someone was publishing the speeches of Hitler. And, you know, and actually I even suspect that the guy selling it thought Hitler had a few good points. Nobody freaks out in Ogden about that. And it's not because we are overrun with people who are trying to actually resurrect the Nazi party. I know there are people who are like, they think that's the big solution to all of our problems.
That's literally Antelope Hill. That is Antelope Hill. And so again, the issue isn't, I know I keep saying the same thing, but the issue isn't that there were books there. The issue seems to be that there were books there by people that do want to resurrect that. Now, will they accomplish it? Probably not. Like there was a very, again, to know history, a very particular set of circumstances that brought about all of that. And there were very particular times in history where things, if it had not occurred, would not have happened. And so, no, they can love the literature and the person all they want. The likelihood of that ever coming back, at least within our country, is very low. But that's still not the issue. The issue isn't that they were there promoting published works, is that they were there and they have the stated purpose of wanting to do that again. And so like that's where the disconnect seems to be.
And but just again, I'm just telling you the truth. It might disappoint some really base listeners, and it'll definitely disappoint all the liberals. But like, just being honest about who we are and what our people are like and what our conversations are like. We are much more in the it's important history. We have varying opinions. This was a good point that Hitler had. This was a bad thing. Like, we don't like the T4 genocide program, killing mentally handicapped people. It's definitely not our thing. You know, like, but we also think that, the porn stuff and the Weimar, like all of this stuff happening in the 30s was really bad, and Bolshevism and communism was way worse than Nazism. And like a lot of that kind of thing. And by the way, also Mao was way worse than Hitler, and Stalin was unquestionably worse than Hitler in terms of the spectrum. So then you ask, why aren't they the big boogeymen that hit? People don't like them, but like, why, if I did a Mao historical thing or like a Pol Pot,
nobody would care.
No one would. It'd be totally different. So that's that. We've probably just disappointed or offended or whatever. Neil Shenvy's still concerned. Owen Strand is still shaking. All the usual suspects are still going to post their clips and whatnot. And I'm not naming a lot of them because I have absolutely I have a message for you. I have absolutely no respect for you as a person. I think you're bad people, and you are actively doing harm against the church, and you should repent or you will go to hell. That's my...
See, what's really interesting is the lobbying of bombs against each other. Like, I would say I don't think Brian knows anything about me, but he did like genuinely answer my question on X the other day, which I appreciate. So he at least saw the question. I don't think he knows or cares about me past that, which is fine because he doesn't need to. But it's interesting that they would say the same thing about Refuge Church that Refuge Church is saying about them. And so at that point, you're calling each other not Christians based on something that isn't creedal. You know, like, so the discussion before about, hey, we have this all in our church, and we have all these discussions, and we've settled on the fact that like we're like, okay, well, we disagree here, but we're still brothers and sisters in Christ. And but then to flank to this, that you disagree with me, and that now you're going to burn in hell because you're actively doing harm to the church. It's just it's a weird take to like put right next to each other. So what makes one Christian then? Is it creedal belief that then applies to application in one's life and brings fruit, or is it you agree with me or disagree with me on this particular take on history? Like, because Eric Kahn, I know, tweeted this out, and Brian basically said the same thing Eric just said in his tweet a couple days later, which was that like, you're actively doing harm to the church and you should repent or you're going to burn in hell. And then you have Neil Shenvy and Eli, and apparently Owen Strand says something about it too, where they're like, hey, you should ignore these guys. These guys are, leading people down a path to hell. You're both saying this based on ideology. And so at that point, we really need to talk about the ideology and not the damning people to hell part, right? The reason that we can say progressives are unquestionably not Christians is because they deny creedal aspects of Christianity, either verbally, or they deny creedal aspects of Christianity applicationally, and the fruit demonstrates they don't actually believe the creeds. I've had progressives before say, well, I believe the Apostles' Creed, but the actual application of their lives don't demonstrate that. Versus there's progressives that I know that just flat out deny parts of the creed, which inadvertently obviously denies part of Scripture. And so that's really where it lies. To go back and forth and lob bombs at each other about you're leading people to hell because of your ideology. Okay, well, if that is the case, if it is literally damnation at stake here, and false teachers at stake here, then the ideology is what needs to be addressed and talked about, which we haven't done at any point. This video specifically, all we've talked about is we think you should read these things to be historically informed, and we think when you read these things, you can come down on either side, but we think you should have access to them. That's what's said in one sentence. And then the next sentence is, well, you are actively harming the church and you should repent or you're going to burn in hell. Because why? Because you brought into question why there was literature at a Christian conference. That seems like a stretch, not only from Brian and Eric's side, but from the other side too, that is condemning them. At that point, it just seems to me that we just need to have a really honest discussion about the ideology that is in the books that you think everyone should read because of historical context. I 100% agree that books should be read, primary sources should be understood so that you can dissect them and say, is this Christian or not? And should it be accepted by Christians or not? And so you can agree, like I'll just use one of Brian's points, that it was a good thing that Hitler was anti-pornography. Fine. There's a lot of non-Christians that are anti-pornography. But it doesn't mean that I lob them as some sort of, person I agree with. I don't. I think that they are operating at best out of the law being written on their hearts, and they haven't, for whatever reason, rebelled against that part yet. That doesn't make them someone that had a good point. That just means that you, at the very base level of your being, at least have the imprint that God has written the law on your heart, and you haven't broken that one yet. And so it's one of those things where, like, at this point, they're just the bombs of, like, damnation being lobbed across the aisle with no actual communication of what's being gone on, and the worst possible assumptions being made about the other side. I mean, it's just a weird way to approach. I mean, again, I guess at this point, the other side doesn't consider the other side brothers at all, when there's no actual reason to do that until you sit down and see if the ideology is antithetical to Christianity or not. Look, liberalism is antithetical to Christianity, but so is Nazi National Socialism, also antithetical to Christianity. Are there things that liberals do that are in line accidentally with biblical values? Yes. Are there things that the Nazi Party did that were accidentally in line with biblical values? Yes. Doesn't mean either one of them are good. It just means by accident and by the law being written on their hearts, they happen to get a couple things right. That's the only thing it means. It doesn't mean that in any way they're good or should be followed. That's altogether different than understanding the history and what someone said.
Opinion of a lot of these.
Can I just ask too, like, your thoughts on? Yeah. So I see this happening with a lot of people who are like well-meaning Christian people.
Yeah.
Reposting people who are known accusers of the brethren.
My word.
And like taking
jumping at it.
Yeah. What's crazy to me though is like you guys are being controlled like puppets.
Yeah, like these bad little Twitter accounts that are the discernment ministers of the anti-Christian nationalist crowd. They're like twitching the marionette puppet and you're going, oh, I'm having an original thought. Oh. It's not an original thought. You're being marionetted by like.
What is so interesting is the people that are like hardcore in agreement with Brian are the same thing. The faceless Aeon accounts are just the other side of the same coin. It's weird, and maybe he knows that, maybe he doesn't see that, but it's the exact same thing. Are there people that jump every time Neil Shimvey or Eli say something? Maybe, probably. I don't know. I don't follow them close enough. Are there people that jump every time Brian says something? Probably. I don't follow them a lot. They're louder. I can tell you that for sure. They're much louder, but I don't know. It's the same sort of thing though. The figurehead of a particular ideology says something, and then other people underneath them fall in line. It's just it's pervasive. It's just everywhere though.
Skinny, like they always call us like what we have father issues. Like I know some of these guys. I know who some of these guys are behind these anonymous accounts. I actually know who some of them are. I'm not going to dox them because that's not what we do. But like one that I know of is like a skinny, unaccomplished, like lower 20s guy who has no. Like there's nothing about him that I would say I should listen to you. Like you've earned somebody paying attention to you. They just controversy farm through all this stuff and try to find what clip, what thing can we use that will cast these guys that we already in a pre-rational way decided we hate for purely tribal reasons. that we can signal to the liberal order, look, guys, we're not like those right wingers over here. Do you like us yet? And then the gays look at you and say, no, you still need to denounce Christ and anything relating to the objectivity of the sexes and like education of like, let us trans your kids, or you are still, they would still call all of you literal Nazis. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
So he's not wrong that people, if you don't fully align with them, still find you to be a dissident of some kind. But that's the same thing on like his side, as far as I can tell. And so it's weird. It's just a weird thing because I don't know, maybe there are people that are trying to signal to the liberals that they're not as Christian as the ultra Christian people. I'm sure there are people that do that, but I just don't think that's the majority of people trying to seek approval, like half approval from the other side. Just like I don't think there's people that post to try to seek approval from Brian or his team. I think you just basically have ideological lines drawn where people have they have a difference of opinion, ideological opinion from you. And so they state that, not to garner favor on some side. I mean, I'm sure there are people that do that, but I don't think it's the majority of people. Because if they did want to get favor from that side, they would just coalesce. They would just go along. They would just say the thing that needed to be said. But people don't do that by and large. That's the same thing. That's the same reason I don't think like the Aeon army of people are effective, because it doesn't matter how much you coalesce to them, they're still going to not think you're far enough unless you have the same ideological lines. It's the same reason that the people that follow Eli or Neil or Owen don't acquiesce, because there's no like you're never going to go far enough for an ideologue. You're just not, unless you are exactly copy pasted them. You're never going to go far enough. And so it's just a matter of saying, like this, it's a war of two sides at this point, both calling each other not Christian without actually discussing the points, I guess. This is where I think I wouldn't want to see it like, let's say Owen Strand and Brian, right? I don't want to see a debate between them. I do think it would be interesting for them to sit down and define terms and discuss ideology. Maybe Owen's a bad example, but like whoever, he named Owen, so that's why I use Owen. Anyone else though, right? To actually sit down, define terms, because this is what I think would happen. If we're being totally honest, what I think would happen is exactly what happened in their unrecorded church meeting, is where like after you work through the definitions and what you actually both believe, it would probably come down to where you weren't all that different. Like you would definitely define things differently. Me and Brian, for example, we're not going to agree on some things. I don't know if I would call him a non-believer, though, that is going to burn in hell forever. I think that's a very far stretch. Now, again, maybe I don't know enough about him and about his theology, but from what I can tell, he believes the essentials of Christianity and then applies them out. Now, are we going to definitely have different opinions on some of that application and how it's done? Probably, I guarantee it. But in the same light, while I would disagree with Neil Shinvey and the fact that he's cool with J.D. Greear and the way J.D. Greear does things, I don't think Neil Shinvey is going to burn in hell forever. He seems to hold to all the things that creedal Christianity holds to, and the application seems to be fairly consistent with that. Do I agree with everything? I don't agree with everything that he says or does, but I also don't think he's going to burn in hell forever. And so it's just one of those things. I don't think it's helpful to cast people into the flames of hell for disagreeing with you and not actually talking to them, unless they blatantly state something that is just completely antithetical or heretical.
Like, it's just, I want these fence riding, middle of the road, third wayists, reformed big accounts to stop doing this thing. One of these puppeteers jerks the string and they say, I'm just asking Brian and Aaron questions. No, you're not. You have our direct messages. You are asking 200,000 followers, not a question, but to assume a conclusion about us. Now, if you hear this episode and you say, what you just said about all of that publication stuff, I disagree and here's why. Respect it.
Yeah.
I totally respect it. You can disagree with that. I think you are completely wrong on an important issue. And I think that it will have bad effects in anything that you build, that you're not thinking about some of these things down to the bone the way that you should. And we're trying to. At the same time, each one will answer to the Lord, not to me. I won't answer to Twitter. I will answer to the session.
See, again, I agree with him on this. This is good. I do think we're in it. Look, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he's not inadvertently dodging the question. Maybe he's just approaching it in a different way. But it is one of these things where he's not acknowledging the fact that Antelope Hill is what Antelope Hill is. We keep going back to this idea that they're just publishing works that you need to read, but that is not the only thing they're doing.
The name of the Lord, and I will answer to the Lord. Myself, for every careless word, I'm thankful for the grace of God in light of that, quite frankly. But at the same time, like this whole I'm just asking for a clarification thing.
Well, and it's also too, I've noticed a lot of it is like, it's not asking questions. It's calling you a Nazi. And then it's like the faux outrage.
Yeah.
Of like, I demand an answer on behalf of all the ladies. Why is this happening? And you're like, okay, let's take a step back. You know,
I hope she sees this, bro.
I said to a few people like, hey, let's think biblically and clearly. Proverbs 18:17.
Yeah.
Give people time to, and we have, and we'll talk about this. We've been dealing with the issues
In the right order.
but in a biblical way.
Yeah.
Like, hey, let's go confront some people. Let's go figure out what happened. Let's go
We'll get there.
biblically deal with it.
Yeah.
We're going to make a measured response
Yeah.
according to biblical justice, not according to the rage of the mob.
Yeah.
And so I just encourage people continually, don't be like the mob in Acts, where people are screaming out one thing, some people are screaming out another, and nobody knew what the heck they were doing.
They actually didn't know why they were there.
They don't even know why they're
Artemis
there.
of Ephesus. Yes. Okay. Well.
So
See, and this is, again, this is it. This is good. This is where it really confuses me, where Eric seems reasonable and well thought out here. And so, like, that's how I assume he is. And then I go to X, and he seems sort of unhinged sometimes. Like, just from what I've seen. Again, I don't know his whole catalog, and I want to give people the benefit of the doubt, because if you see one tweet of mine, you may make a multitude of assumptions that aren't true. And so I don't want to make multiple assumptions of what's not true of a few of his tweets I've seen. But it seems like he's totally reasonable here. Like, we need to do things right order. We need to do it biblically. And then he'll get over on X and say something, post like a meme or a video that is like, it's completely from, like, it just seems like unthought through. And so that's where it's very confusing, observing this from a distance.
calm down, ma'am.
Hey, ma'am, calm down. So to the other, here's the stuff that we did have issue with. That the flyer that was distributed, again, the guys that were doing the booth, this is their normal practice that they just didn't even think about. We've communicated, to Eric's point about in order, we went to them and said, tell us what happened. Here is what people are saying happened. They're saying that you're handing out a flyer that's leading to everything from a literal cult to literal pornography. So what's up with that? And they said, yeah, we do this flyer. We kind of update it every once in a while. We hand it out with our books. It's not like we avow everything here. It's just, this is kind of like related pro-white businesses. And we are pro-Western civilization.
So why would you have something on a flyer that you don't avow, though? Like, that's the weird thing, right? I'm not putting somebody on a flyer that's like adjacent to the things I believe in. I'm going to only give you something that I'm like, yeah, I think these are helpful resources. Just like Brian and Eric said before, like, they want people that are Christian there because they want Christian businesses promoted. And so for a company to be like, well, we don't agree with all of this stuff, but now the reason that is true, that's a true statement, because on that guy's stream that I watched, he said that he's totally okay with partnering with Christians, and he encouraged his followers that aren't Christians to partner with Christians because of the alignment that he thinks is there. And so it's basically a means to an end. That was like seemed to be his thinking, a means to an end. And so I 100% believe that's probably why they do have people on their flyer that they don't avow, because for them it's more of a means to an end than an actual ideological foundation. Not that Christians should operate like that, but that's like the Antelope Hill people. That's why I think they probably do have those people on there that they don't agree with, because for them it's not about agreement; it's about a means to an end for their message.
Pro-white, pro-Anglo, all those things. And some of the links on it, they're like, yeah, that was, to them, they're a secular publishing house. They're like, this is a pro-white tarot card thing. And our response is, if you're pro-white, you should probably not talk to demons and tell the white people to talk to demons, because they've been doing enough of that for the last, century. There wasn't, people overblew this. There wasn't like a link to literal pornography. There was a link to a men's magazine that, like, I think you said it was maybe men's manosphere adjacent or something.
Yeah, I didn't look at it.
We certainly wouldn't like it. Don't like the Twitter account that's associated with it. Don't like that link. But just so you know, that act of handing that out broke the terms of our actual being a booth at our event rules, because you're not allowed to cross-promote another business that we didn't actually have on our list for obvious reasons. So we talked to them about that. They apologized. We said you shouldn't have done that. They said, we're sorry, you're right. If someone had told us, it all happened too late. The stuff, by the time we knew about all this, like the sponsors are getting packed up. So they said we would have immediately pulled it, whatever. I still disagree with them about the utility of that. I think that it is actively insidious, and that the material on that flyer, I think, was actively harmful to the cause of, if you like white people, then you should not encourage them to join paganism and cults that are destroying the world and are just, same jersey as the feminists. Same jersey, same team, just different mask on when they go. Like, that's Satan with a different jersey on. Okay, here's the reality, though. Nobody that knows us or anything we've ever said about anything would ever think, given that information. Brian and Eric knew about this, and they were real cool with it. And let me tell you one of the obvious reasons why. The book.
Okay, well, I'm going to let him keep talking, because we'll see, because it goes to my point before about people making assumptions about you.
We published for the first time. Can you grab that for me? Right there behind you, the red one.
Oh,
yeah, the big red one. This is the book that we published for the first time at the conference. You'll notice the title is Killing Lust, Fighting for Purity in a Pornographic Age by our own Pastor Ben Garrett. So here's the neat thing about our position on pornography. It's gay as AIDS. And a lot of you need to stop looking at it. That's my position on it. We're publishing a book to help you. If you can't afford it, I'll give it to you for free. Like, shoot me an email, because you need to stop looking at that's really gay and it's really sinful and you'll go to hell for it. So that's our position on pornography. I know that was groundbreaking and nobody ever would have believed that. We were very disappointed to see that distributed, quite frankly, and very annoyed, very frustrated, because here's what it did. It took. We'll publish the speeches. I encourage all the people who shared all the marionette puppeteers, go watch every single thing that happened at the conference and tell me, and give me a list of everything with it you disagreed with. Because it took the focus of a conference that was the War for Normal, where we were for a year planning, saying, what is the thing our people need to hear? And we do. We see the political theory explosion, the interest in that. And we were like, a lot of guys need to hear. You think way too much about political theory, and you do way too little political action and even things prior to that in terms of your personal piety, your personal rule of your family, ruling well in your spheres of influence. And so that is what we talked about for a number of speeches for 2 days and panels. And that was what everybody took away.
Productive households, how to lead in family worship.
That was what the conference was. That is what.
So here's the thing. I can understand the aggravation of your entire conference being overshadowed by like one thing. That would be incredibly annoying. Because you put a lot of time, effort, energy, days of no sleep into that. And your conference is being the only thing anyone's talking about is the booth that wasn't even a main aspect of the conference at all. It was a booth out with a whole bunch of 51 other booths, and nobody's talking about the 51 other booths. And I can see where the frustration comes in to be. But again, it doesn't take an hour to say that. You could say this slipped through the cracks. We understand how it slipped through the cracks. We don't agree with the booth at all. We don't have an issue with the material being published in a way that helps people understand history and the context of history. I do, I'm glad that he said, like, you can read it and come down on either side. You don't have to agree with me on it, but I think that it should be available. Like, all of these things could be said in a 15-minute video while at the same time saying we don't agree with their promoting of a very particular ideology in this direction. We don't agree with the fact that they broke our terms of service. And because we don't agree with the promotion of this ideology, nor do we agree with them breaking our terms of service, they're not welcome back. And we don't think you should purchase things from them because of that. In fact, I mean, you obviously could go either way with it, but you could use just as strong language toward them as you did with the people that are marionetting or whatever, and you can say, I think that their ideology is leading people straight to hell. So I think that's where, at least for me, and I think for a lot of other people, when you look at this and you say, like, I can appreciate a lot of the things they're taking accountability from or for, but I think it seems that they are going 10 toes in on what they believe, but in doing so, they are also showing their cards that while they don't hold to all of the ideology, they definitely lean that way. And so, like, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But I think terms need to be, or definition needs to be clear, and conversations need to be had about where some of that lands in regards to the gospel and how the application is played out. It would not be hard. Well, it would be hard, but at least, I mean, it would be important, I think, to put out, like, this is where we agree and where we don't agree with this ideology. It's obviously a sticking point, a stumbling block, an issue. And instead of just saying all of you that are, disagreeing with us are doing damage to the church, and those people saying the same thing of you, it would be easier to define terms, definitions, and agreements, and disagreements. So at least people know exactly where you stand on this. That's not what we're doing, though. That's not what we're doing.
Every single person there. And so I was angry with myself for as the one responsible. Eric and I are responsible. I was angry at us for it was retarded not to think ahead on that and not go like, Also, I am going to speed this up because I'm running out of time and I want to make sure that we get through some of it. So I'm going to go to 1.5 just so we can get through this. I should have thought we should have had a more, it's getting bigger. We can't assume anymore that everybody who shows up for sponsors is going to understand our kind of unwritten rules, like the rules of politeness, like don't go to a Christian conference and actively promote paganism. That would be like a normal house rule for Christians. But yeah, I was mad at myself. I was frustrated with the Antelope guys, quite frankly, which is why, again, when you have a problem with someone, what do? You tell them.
Start a rage mob on X. Is that not the correct? Oh, so it's close. Not that. So it's not.
Okay. And again, it's really good that he went and talked to them, but he's aggravated with them only for promoting paganism, namely the tarot cards and the pornography, not the paganism that would be associated with the ideology of National Socialism under Hitler.
So close. No, we talked, before we talked to you guys, we talked to them. So this frustrates you guys about us a lot of times. We don't always instantly comment on stuff because, believe it or not, we have the phone numbers of most of the people involved in a lot of these controversies. And most of the time, we're talking to them, like, quite directly about stuff. Even our friends who were like, hey, man, I think that what you just did is kind of dumb, like tactically.
That's the good and right thing to do, 100%.
Or truthfully or whatever, we think you're wrong. We do that. And our friends could attest to that.
Yeah, and we
just don't do it on Twitter.
Yeah, and we're also willing, we've taken feedback.
And we'll take it to the chin. So, like, yeah, I was mad at myself. I was mad at that happening. And those guys have apologized and said, hey, we're sorry. You're right. So forgive them for doing that. But here's the thing I was mad about, though, was that this really, really tremendous, I think, just edifying, thousands of seeds sown in hundreds of fields and families and businesses, and really good stuff from some wise men, Stephen Wolf, Zach Garris, Adam, like our guys that we would say, we invited them to speak on this thing, and we want you to listen to them on this thing because they have things that will help you here. And every single talk was like, yes, that was so good. And everybody there was built up and edified. And I hope through the Sunday service as well on the Lord's Day, where we lift our eyes from earthly things and behold the heavenly things. And just that was what we were, where we were. And then this very distracting and quite frankly, not representative of even like we could have done a whole conference on World War II history. I'm not saying we never will or whatever, but we probably not. But it's like, we didn't do that. That wasn't what this was about. And so I was frustrated with us, regardless of what you think about those two issues, like the history piece and the flyer piece. You should all agree about the flyer piece, by the way. It was bad. Even our guys should agree like that was bad. So regardless of what you think about that, I think we were rightly annoyed that was taken. And so we're going to do a whole like follow-up episode like we had planned.
Again, everyone agrees the flyer was terrible. No one, or I haven't seen any disagreement that you can't read primary sources from terrible people. Everybody's cool with that too, so you can know the history of it. It's the promotion of it, right? We haven't addressed that. It's the not promotion by New Christian Press. It's the promotion of it by the publisher themselves.
Some of the pastors in from our church and just talk about what we loved about the conference and try to actually turn our attention back to like the meaningful, what was the point of this whole thing we spent a literal year working on, and not what our detractors want to use it as a bludgeon to personally destroy Eric and I and prove that, yet again, for the 10th time, this time we've got him, and I just get that sense from our enemies.
So to his point here, like I can understand to a point that when you are beat down on what seems to be everything you ever say, that it can seem like everyone is not in your corner that isn't in the immediate room with you. Like if every time you post something or every time you say something or every time you preach on something, you're just waiting for the baseball bats to come and the fists to start flying and the retweets to come. Like you just know it's coming. There is a defense mechanism that builds up where you just assume that everyone is out to get you, because you have the evidence to prove that basically that's true. I don't think that is altogether accurate. Are there people that absolutely hate Brian and Eric? Yes, there are. Are there people that are asking, like, and should you ignore those people? Probably, because I don't think those people are going to give you a benefit of a doubt no matter what you say. Are there people that are genuinely asking questions? They are not out for your destruction. I think that is the majority of people. And in that case, I don't think it hurts to offer a clarifying statement. I think this video altogether, as I initially said, I think it is helpful. Do I think that we are addressing the actual elephant in the room? I don't think we are. It is helpful though to see sort of in the mind, inside the mind and workings and the purpose of why they did this conference. But I still think we're sidestepping the actual issue, which is that there was a company there that was unashamedly pro-Mustache Man, wants other people to believe the Mustache Man's words, wants people to get in line and behind the Mustache Man. Will that happen? That's not even the question. No, I've already said it. The likelihood of that is very low, but that isn't stopping them from trying. And it's not that they are publishing works of the Mustache Man. It is that they are publishing works of the Mustache Man for a very specific purpose. And we're not discussing that, and we only have 8 minutes left, and I don't think we get to that at all.
They're like, we've got him. This time we've got him. And I'm like, you guys, my opinion hasn't changed from whatever I said in 2022 or 3 or 4 or whatever, on a lot of this. I just repeated myself.
Yeah.
On a lot of this.
Well, I think you have to, and most people do, I think at this point in the game, like the last couple of years, you have to understand, like there's people who have Christians who have decided to hate us for whatever reason. And so there's this thing where you're like standing on the sideline, just being like, I'm waiting. Yeah. Totally. I'm waiting to get you. And look, as you said, let's, a lot of those people, they still have our phone numbers. Happy to talk, happy to address the issues head on.
Yeah. Like legitimately anybody could come up to either of us at a conference, and many did, and say, what do you think about this? And I'm just going to tell you what I think about it. Quite frankly, like it gets us in trouble that we do this.
So 2 things on this. One, they block a lot of people for having say like, you can ask us anything. Now, again, you are not going to answer every DM. There is no way. I don't answer hardly any of them for the exact same reason. There's too many of them. I would spend all day, every day answering them. I'm not going to answer them. My mailbox is full. It will continue to get fuller. I will probably not look at your DM, nor do I expect Brian or Eric to do that either, because they probably get more than me. The point being is that everyone has asked, do you agree with Antelope Hill? Or not everyone has asked that. That's been the question I've seen a lot. And it's very easy to say, no, we don't. We agree with the republishing of works for the purpose of education and contextualization. We do not agree with the ideology. That didn't even take 15 seconds. Like it doesn't need an hour.
You all know, but that is our practice. It's what we want to do. And so this whole, like, they're hiding their true views on whatnot for, political reasons or whatever. There is a sense in which I recognize that within this broad coalition of, so you have this huge bubble of Christianity in America, and then you have a very much smaller bubble of Reformed Christianity in America, and you have a very much smaller bubble, like a tenth again the size, of politically engaged in the debate about Christian nationalism, Reformed Christianity, and egalitarianism and feminism. And then within that camp, you have about 17 tribes that are all believe slightly different things. Some of them on opposite ends of things and hate each other. Some of them love each other. Some of them are like, I don't know about you, but I kind of like what you did here, but I think you're wrong on this. That's like this little thing down here, what's happening. And we just don't have a problem telling you ball and strike what I think about these different things. And even that is not us declaring from on high that we are now giving the papal decree on the issue, that like the King's Hall is an expert on every single thing it ever touches. We are pastors. The main thing I think you should listen to us about,
which this is good. It's good, right? I mean, what I do admire about him is that he's not saying you have to believe what I say. It's an opinion, which you got to give him credit for.
is like the pastor parenting marriage pie. Like that's the stuff that we do day in, day out. The political stuff, we think it affects how we do that. That's why we talk about it, because we're pastoring people who live in this political world and have been shaped by these presuppositions that are ideological and philosophical and social and political. And so we do want to know those things. But the main thing that we are trying to do is to actually build a Christian borough that has an answer for every part of what it means to be human. That's what we're up to. We miss the mark on things, all over the place here and there. But we're doing it convictionally. It's not a grift. It's not an act. This is like just arrogant. This is what we think.
Yeah. And look, again, I've said this before. I disagree with Brian on a lot of things, but there's a lot of things he gets way more correct than a lot of people. I've listened to maybe 3 episodes of him and his wife's podcast because someone suggested I give it a listen to, and so I just went like episode after episode, like 3 episodes in a row, and they were all really good on parenting, on marriage, hit the bullseye every single time. Now, is that representative of everything that they talk about? I guarantee you it's not, but he is right on a lot of things. And so it's one of those things where I think he should also give the benefit of the doubt to some of the people on the other side that he disagrees with, that there are simply disagreements and not you are leading people into active damnation. It's one of those things where you can agree and still not care about their opinion and probably disrespect some of the things they do, while at the same time saying, like, I'm not like, just don't listen to them. Just keep doing your thing. And if there is a valid critique of a doctrinal issue, explain why you have that doctrinal issue and move on. You don't even have to name the name. You can just be like, this is why we're covering this thing because it's important. I think sometimes by responding, you give more fuel to the fire. There's a lot of people that I've done sermon reviews on. Either they really liked it or they really hated it, and they wanted to have me on their podcast or a phone call. And I was like, it's not necessary. It's not. It doesn't matter. Like, I don't want to gas you up more, and I don't want to have a fight with you. It is what it was, and we just move on.
What we want. This is what we're doing.
Yeah, maybe a good place to end the episode, I think, would just be maybe an exhortation or encouragement from you about, look, we have these things, like we learn from our mistakes, but also there's a way to receive with joy the trials.
Oh, yeah.
And then to move forward and say, look, every time you're a part of a good work, there's going to be times where you reevaluate, but to like continue to move forward with boldness.
Yeah.
So maybe just.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was on the Lord's Day because this all blew up Saturday. And frankly, I was frustrated. I was discouraged and went through the Lord's Day, preached on 1 Corinthians 13 and Christian love, and was sitting after the service just like pretty down, honestly, and frustrated and kind of like, just you feel a little powerless when you have the explosion of people hating you who literally don't know you. And it's not the first time it's happened to us. We're familiar with the sensation, and you get calluses to it, which is good and helpful. Yeah. But I just had this thought. I think a lot of us had it, that a reminder of something we tell our people and we need to hear ourselves. It's like every single thing that passes into your life does so through the kind hand of a good father who loves you and who is using it for your good. So, David fleeing from his throne and the heckler over there is heckling him and they're like, should we go kill that guy, King David? And he's like, no, he might be saying something true. Leave him alone. God will judge. Like, let God do it. This whole let the Lord judge between you and me. And also, this is not just a piety signal. This is true. Like whoever hates you, like they don't know the half of your sin. You are way worse in some ways than they ever will. Like if they had God's knowledge of you, imagine that without God's love and mercy, they would be able. You think about cancel culture. Like think about what if God wanted to like take us all to the woodshed based on perfect knowledge with no mercy and no love. And it's like, wow, that would be really bad. So I just thought, Lord, whatever it is that you want us to take from this, I know that this whole thing is in my life because you willed that it would be. And I'm like, if I'm wrong about everything and you want me to repent and all the way, and I'm totally wrong about everything, please, I want to know that. If it's something, and this episode is the result of that evaluation of going, okay, what did we screw up? No, well, okay, we did. Yeah, here, that was off. I'm not happy that we functionally allowed, not willfully, but functionally allowed people to say paganism is great and maybe, subscribe to this Bad Men's magazine. Don't do that, people who went to the conference. Not that I think any of them are dumb enough to do that, but whatever. I'm pretty frustrated. Lord, please forgive me for that. And, what do we need to do that better next time? And then what should I say? But before God with a clean conscience, I'm convinced on this, and this. And I think that is, okay. And that's the result. This episode is the result of that evaluation. And the main thing that I want to take away personally, and that I would encourage Christians to do is just to stop living in the fear of man, where everything you do, you're constantly thinking, what will everybody else think of me? And to think, what will God think of me? What will God think of me? And before God, that is what we are trying to do here. We're sinners, we're fallen, all that's true, like absolutely. But that's what we're trying to do. And I would encourage.
So all of that is great. Like 100%, co-sign that 1,000%. I do think he should give some of his detractors the same benefit of the doubt, though. I think that those that are asking some of the questions, like legitimately, not trying to attack him, not trying to bring him down, not trying to crush everything he's built, because he's right. Look, at a much, 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 much smaller level, like a micro level, I get feedback all the time from sermon reviews or the things I post on Instagram that are like, you can at a point feel like no one is on your side. And that's fine. He's right. Everything, I mean, it has grown me tremendously. And he's right. You can feel like, and I can only imagine if you had all of the things like on top of that he has to manage, where you would feel that way. Like, and that's what I said before. When I think sometimes though, whenever you're attacked all the time, you feel like everything is an attack when it's not. And so it's one of those things where it is good and right to discern who is asking genuine questions and who isn't. And my point here is I doubt he'll ever see this, and that's fine. But my issue with this whole thing is that we have spent an hour evading the actual question, as far as I'm concerned. And the actual question is, how did a pro-authoritarian, fascist publishing company that is wants Christians to align with them in their ideology get into a conference, and it appears to be welcomed back because they said sorry for a pamphlet? Like, these are two different things. We're about done.
Whatever step you need to take in your life to kill the fear of man, to stop living under the gaze of whatever thing it is that's controlling you, to stop doing that from whatever direction it's coming from, and to fear the Lord and to live under his gaze. And know that it is a stern gaze, but it is the gaze of a father who loves you more than anybody else. He loves you perfectly. Like God loves us perfectly because he is love and he is perfect. And so everything that defines his essence defines everything that he does. And so his love for you is perfect. He is perfect. He's for you. And he's also on your side. So, and the funny thing is, this cracks me up. God is on the side of us and some of the people who hate us. And there's a lot of Christians and God is like,
so yeah, there you go. I mean, again, that is at least a hint of him giving other people the benefit of a doubt.
Guys, will you just... Okay. Yeah. He's not really doing that. His will is perfect. He's carrying all this out according to his plan. And he's going to bring in the fullness of time all things to their perfect conclusion. But that thought always cracks me up. And I'm like, yeah, that person who hates me, and some of them I think are snakes and not Christians, and that they need to repent and not go to hell because I love them and don't want them to go to hell. But some of them are Christians, and we have different opinions about one thing or other, and I'm right and they're wrong. And I'm sure there's things in the other direction too. And and God is on both of our side. And so that cracks me up in particular, a little bit. And it makes it sets in perspective these kinds of days where you're like, well, let me put on my hard hat and open Twitter.com. And I cannot emphasize this enough. There's some of you that I don't respect your opinion whatsoever, and I don't care what you think. And you can put it in my inbox, which is just a garbage can. So for some of you, that's a message I'd like to leave.
That's where it's going.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's funny there is he says you can DM me, but he says it's a garbage can though. I'm not going to look at it, which I think he's talking about specifically certain people. But okay, so that was the whole video. Dear Lord, it took us 2.5 hours to get through an hour-long video. My apologies, but if you're new here and you're into that kind of thing, subscribe, because this is exactly what we do with the sermon reviews as well. So anyway, guys, ending thoughts here. There are definitely things there to appreciate in regards to taking some of the responsibility for some of the things that were obviously issues. I think that it's confusing to me that they seem like reasonable people when you hear them, but then some of the responses online they appear unwise and unreasonable. Now, I'm sure there's a reason for that. Right? They probably perceive some of the people they're responding to as uncharitable or not Christian or only out for their bad. It would be really hard to tell, though, based on like an interaction or two with people online, but it's whatever. They're going to do what they're going to do. Do I think that they're literal mustache people? I don't think they are. It would have been more clarifying if they would have actually described like where they do align with Antelope Press and where they don't. That's the thing I think we're missing from the whole thing. Like, no one's questioning that you should read historical works from primary sources that contextualize what's going on. What people do have questions about is, do you agree with Antelope Hill and their position? And that was never addressed. Like I said, I think everything was very helpful in the video. I think that they took responsibility for much of it. But the one issue that I think was the most pressing, they dodged completely in regards to what they actually believe about the ideology and where they line up with Antelope Hill on. And we probably won't ever get the answer. And if you feel like your time was wasted, I'm sorry. You can make sure you leave some more of those thumbs down. But if you felt like this was helpful and you think it was beneficial, leave some thumbs up. That helps the algorithm. And if you really, really want other people to see it, you can comment, because that also helps the algorithm. This has been nearly 2 hours and 40 minutes that I could have used for other things, but hopefully this was helpful to you at the end of the day. Guys, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you later.